right, it is 10 o'clock. I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. The chair notes there's a quorum present. Let's do the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's go into 2.0, which is additions and revisions to the agenda. This is to the revised agenda, which was sent out on Monday. The only thing I would like to add after announcements and next meeting, I want to add a proclamation expressing gratitude to Chris Fitzsimmons for 28 years of exemplary service to Gilliam County. Any other additions or revisions?
I would like to have at least a brief discussion about what positions or board positions are open. We had a discussion last year about this time, about the same place. So
okay.
And also, when I submitted the my agenda item briefing on the grant writing, I also included in that briefing to discuss grant writing support for Gilliam County as a whole, and it's not on the agenda.
Okay.
And I think we kind of left that out there, so let's see what the status is.
Okay, so I will add board openings under 6.4. And then on the grant program, we'll just do / grant writing. Any other additions or revisions? Sherry, anything?
I do not.
Okay, let's move into correspondence and public comment. Individuals wishing to address the county court may do so at this time and at other times throughout the meeting. Speakers are asked to raise your hand to be recognized by the chair, give your name and address, and limit comments to 3 minutes. Those who are signing in via Zoom, it is *6 to unmute yourself, or the lower left-hand corner. Teresa, could you push the continue? Or just unmute yourself on the lower left-hand corner. I always remind folks that we are very informal, so as we move through the agenda, if there's an agenda item that you would like to weigh in on as we go through, please feel free. We always welcome feedback and input. So with that, any public comments? Anybody on the Zoom? Okay, let's go into correspondence. We have a couple of things. First thing is a preliminary 2021 population estimate notice that we received from Portland State University. Basically, listed below is a preliminary population estimate for July 1, 2021, as well as a revised 2020 estimate and 2020 census figure. So that will be on the court's webpage under our agenda support material, if anybody is interested in seeing that. Just as an FYI, our preliminary population estimate is 2,039 people. We are. Great news. So, also under correspondence, I have a couple of letters to read. The first one comes from Pat Shaw requesting that it be read into the record, so I will go ahead and do so. Gilliam County Court members, after watching the video of the December 1st, 2021 Gilliam County Court meeting, I felt the need to respond. I strongly agree with the commissioner's decision to have more discussion concerning the vacated chief of staff / HR position. After being a Gilliam County employee for 26 years, elected official for 22 years, 6 of those as county judge, I have a fairly good knowledge of the duties of the county judge and of county operations in general. 2 of the county judges' many duties that I would have considered at the top of my list were those of juvenile judge and staff supervisor. These 2 duties, which were at a very minimum 25% of my workload, were both eliminated from the current judge's duties, while at the same time the position salary increased by over 25% in 8 years. I suspect that the actual hours of work have also decreased in the last 8 years. In a county of this size, the staff supervising duties should easily fall within the realm of the CEO, county judge. There has always been a need for an HR position, but we never felt that we were a large enough entity to hire a qualified full-time person. A partnership with a nearby county for this position would have been the ideal situation. I agree with the commissioners that the person holding the HR position should never be the staff supervisor. It has proved to not work well. I cringed when I heard the judge's comments during the court meeting that the public does not have enough knowledge of county business to serve on a discussion committee. The court should always be open to listening to their public. Occasionally, some government employees forget who their employer is. There are several former county employees and former elected officials who have knowledge of what works and what does not work in county government. There is a wealth of untapped human resources in our county. When I retired, I wanted to serve as a volunteer for the county. I chose several areas where I felt I could serve the county well and enjoy serving. However, when things started happening under the current leadership that disappointed me, I decided that I could no longer volunteer for the county. Because of my experience, I fully understand the lack of people willing to serve on county boards. Thanks for listening. Pat Shaw, concerned citizen. And then this letter. Dear fellow Gilliam County Court members, as I read Mrs. Shaw's letter to the county court, I was reminded by this saying I saw on Pinterest. It said, "Don't look back. You aren't going that way." A few days later, a dear friend mentioned an interview she saw of the great Norman Lear. In it, he explained his over next philosophy that quote, when something is over, it's over, and you're on to next, whatever next happens to be. I say to you, my fellow Gilliam County Court members, that we're in the space between. What's over is over. There are, however, a few points that I'd like to make before we move on to what's next. First, I commend Mrs. Shaw on her long history of service at Gilliam County. I know from experience that public service jobs are much more difficult than they appear from the outside, and I appreciate anyone who is willing to raise their hand and serve their community. That being said, and with all due respect to Mrs. Shaw, as leaders of Gilliam County, we need to stop looking back because that's not where we're headed. Things change and we must too. Mrs. Shaw is remembering and asking us to base our decisions on a time that no longer exists. When Mrs. Shaw was sworn in as county judge, Facebook was in its infancy. Zoom was something that race cars did, and our young people were moving away, not moving home. As county judge, she may have felt that prioritizing staff supervision was the best use of her time. I am not questioning her decision. As elected officials, we are empowered to decide what our legacy will be, where we want to spend our time and energy in service to our communities. My only question is why I am not afforded the same opportunity she was. You see, when I ran for this office in 2018, I told the voters my priority was improving their lives, that I would spend 100% of my time on the most critical challenges facing our communities, finding solutions to the housing shortage, bringing affordable high-speed internet to every home and business, solving the childcare crisis, creating new family wage jobs, and modernizing and professionalizing our county government systems and policies. In that election, the voters said, "Don't look back. We're not going that way." Mrs. Shaw says she cringed at my remarks regarding not involving the public in personnel decisions. I'll set aside this creative twisting of words and complete lack of context here and just say this. Earlier this year, the voters had an opportunity to review my track record as Gilliam County Judge and to reconsider whether they wanted me to continue in the role. In fact, most of the points in Mrs. Shaw's letter were arguments made against me by the recall petitioners, some of which are sitting in this room. And yet the people defeated the recall election and kept me in office. I know who I work for, and they are done with looking back. They want leaders that keep Gilliam County moving forward, and it's time their voices were heard too. All right, let's move on to consent agenda.
Do you have anything on the consent agenda you want to discuss? I move we accept the consent agenda.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of consider approval of December 1st regular meeting minutes, consider reappointment of David Greiner and Chris Fatland to the Gilliam County Library Board effective January 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2025. Consider reappointment of Lisa Helms, Amanda Nelson, and Eilene Flory to the Local Community Health Partnership Advisory Committee effective January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. Consider approval of Amendment 2 to the Gilliam County Road Use Agreement number 2018-02 North Hurlburt Wind LLC Consider reappointment of Judge Elizabeth Farrar Campbell to the AOC Legislative Committee effective January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2022. And consider appointment of Assessor Chet Wilkins as Gilliam County Tax Collector. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Let me just fast forward to the next thing. Okay, under unfinished business, we have consider approval of resolution number 2021-14, a resolution withdrawing from North Central Public Health District. And that actually is coupled with 5.2. So I'd like to discuss them together if we could, which is first reading and adoption of ordinance number 2021-07 in the matter of authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with Oregon Health Authority for the purposes of financing public health services and declaring an emergency. So as you guys recall, we sort of set in motion a withdrawal from North Central Public Health District and the process for taking public health back to Gilliam County and partnering with South Gilliam Health District. And so our legal counsel, Lori Cooper, is the one who's working with us on this. Do you need your?
I'm having this a little trouble getting around the cord.
Okay, I didn't know.
And I hate you having to look around me at Pat, so
I
I'm trying to back up.
I wasn't sure if you needed your stool.
I have my stool. I have my stool, thank you.
Okay, so what Lori is telling us is that there are two things that need to happen in order for us to provide the formal notice. The first would be approving the resolution, which would formally withdraw us from the IGA that created NCPHD. And keep in mind that during our last meeting, I think I noted, she wanted us to check in with the other governing bodies and make sure that they were not going to raise any objections about this date. I have not checked in with Scott Hagee yet, but I did check in with, Commissioner Hagee. I did check in with Judge DeBolskis, and he did not think there would be any problem on Sherman County's side. So the first step would be approving the resolution to withdraw. And then the second piece is actually approving an ordinance which would allow us to begin the discussion with OHA about putting together an IGA to get public health, to bring the funding this direction rather than to NCPHD. You'll notice in the public notice as well as in the ordinance itself that it does declare an emergency. The reason is that under normal ordinance rules, we would have to read it 13 days apart, and then it doesn't become enacted until 90 days after, which would put us clear into the springtime before we would be able to actually act on it. So the reason the emergency is there is so that I can, as soon as this afternoon, basically do the formal notifications and it becomes effective immediately. So those are the two pieces that we would need to do. And then Lori has drafted letters that I would just sign, basically saying, here are the documents that the court approved and that we're beginning that process formally. So we should have it done plenty of time for the 6-month notification that we need to provide. Any questions?
No, I would say that I was, we had a board meeting last night, in the Public Health District, and a couple of things did come up I thought were maybe part of the discussion. One is the state of Oregon has putting in place the 1st of July tobacco licensing for retailers, which will also be in addition to what's been going on. There would be getting licensing fees and inspections involved in that. But it sounds like some of the counties are going to have the state do that for them. So that option's out there. And then one of the other concerns I think that's going on with the district at this point is they're running through their COVID relief funding rapidly. And when they look at how out there, how far COVID issues continue, that they will run out of funding.
That's
It's
what
your
you know.
turn.
That's what you know,
That's
right?
what I know, a lot
That's
more.
all I know.
Well, I'm glad we've got to a point where we're moving forward, and we're going to make it happen, and that the other counties are also in agreement. So
Mhm.
that makes it a little easier to make it happen. So I move to approve resolution number R 2021-14 as presented.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve resolution number R 2021-14 as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and then we would need to do a first reading of the ordinance.
I move to have the first reading of ordinance number 2021-07 by title only, or is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we have the first reading of ordinance number 2021-07 by title only. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let me read this really quick. In the county court for the state of Oregon, in and for the county of Gilliam, ordinance number 2021-07, in the matter of authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for the purposes of financing public health services and declaring an emergency. Sage.
It is. I move to accept the first reading of ordinance number 2021-07 by title only and adopt the ordinance.
And I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the first reading of ordinance number 2021-07 by title only and to adopt the ordinance. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We will get letters out to OHA and to the governing bodies that will go to the Sherman and Wasco County, Sherman County Court, the Wasco County Board of Commissioners, and then NCPHD will also receive the notification. Next steps is just to kind of give you a preview of what to expect. We will need to actually get approval from OHA in order to have the 0.1 FTE. They want to be able to, we have to actually apply for that and they have to sign off on it. They have done that for other counties. And I think because we're structuring it the way those other counties are, I'm hoping that we won't have any issues with that. Once I get an okay from OHA that they're comfortable with that, I would anticipate bringing a position description to the court to formally create that position. I think the intention would be to appoint Holly into that as sort of the liaison in between. And then we also, of course, need to actually put the IGA together. So I'm anticipating OHA will be sending us over some documents. I think Holly and I will probably put our heads together and figure out which of the services would be coming to the health district, which we need to contract out and which are probably not, at least initially, a good fit, or we just don't have the population to support. You know, there's some things that are just not applicable. Like I don't think we have any TB cases in the county, so that wouldn't necessarily be a service that we would be providing. So I would expect an IGA probably early next year, depending on how quickly OHA's attorneys turn that around for us. And then it's off to the races, I think, after that. So
Then the work begins.
exactly.
I think we need to zero in on startup costs, so we have that in line for the budgeting process, and know where we're at. Just zero in with the title.
And the process of what happens with when NCPHD is dissolved then, and how we, or if they're continuing on without us, what is our portion of the funding? That's an issue.
Yeah,
that we really need to look at as soon as possible.
I see that Shelley is on, Campbell is on there, so I would anticipate that once we get the final or the official notification, that I would be circling back with her and Commissioner Schwartz.
They are very anxious to find out where we're at, so they know what they need to do.
Perfect. We should have. Hi, Shelley.
Hi. Thank you for giving me a moment to speak to that. Yeah, we are happy to meet with you and and work through that. We have received some information from OHA on the initial funding for the program elements that starting in July would go to Gilliam County. So your liaison, Andrew, does have some of that information that they've already been working on.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and I believe he sent you an email for us to start having those conversations. So whenever it works for you guys, just let us know. We're happy to meet with you.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, anything else on this point? I am anticipating we'll have lots of, this will be a recurring theme on the agenda for the next 6 months or so. Okay, if not, let's move on to 5.3, which is review and possible action on county grant program, as well as an update on grant writing. Which would you like to start with, Pat?
Let's just on, because I think this is the shortest, but get out of the way. But I know we've had at least 3 discussions in county court in regards to some sort of a grant writing system for the county that they could access. And I think the last discussion, it was only on the agenda once, and on the minutes once I could find, but I know we talked about it in a work session in the city hall. And we also had a recent quick discussion about, I think you were going to go back to elected officials and see what their needs were, and wondering if there was anything that we know along those lines. And now we're in a position where we have some grant writing issues with transportation that may fall into that discussion. And so where we're at,
Yeah, so I did bring this up during, I can't remember if it was the last all staff meeting or maybe 2 all staff meetings ago, just to ask for some feedback from the staff primarily, whether they felt like it was needed. There are definitely some departments that raised their hands and said yes. I think transportation definitely is as one of the major recipients of grant funding, but I think also the weed department probably has that need. Family services expressed a need. I think where I'm maybe stuck is figuring out, because I'm not sure, I don't know how this industry works. If a grant writer, if what we need to be doing is setting aside funds and empowering our folks to find the right fit, or if we need to, if one person would have the expertise to be able, see what I'm saying? Because these are pretty divergent, you know, transportation looks a lot different than weeds, looks a lot different than, say, community.
And if we're offering somebody up to say the cities to access or that's very different than infrastructure dollars. It's out there. I think it's kind of a 2-piece deal when you look at it, because part of it is how do you find the funding to apply for the grant, and the other part is to write that grant, which you know is funding available that you are eligible for.
Are there any firms out there that offer grant writing that may be diverse in some of these?
I haven't done any research on it. So that would be an area I think maybe we could start and see. I mean, one thing we might look at doing, at least for the community need, is since this is sort of part of the grant review that we're doing, is if it's a capacity like, hey, we can't afford the grant writer, I don't see any reason why we couldn't modify the grant program guidelines to say to our nonprofits or cities or whoever need that capacity that, hey, these funds are eligible, these competitive grants are eligible to help support you in going after a grant writer, or, you know, because I do think, for instance, like our childcare folks, there are, I think it would be, my assumption is that because there are so many grant avenues out there, finding a single person or even a firm that is aware of all of the potential grant opportunities for, say, education, and then for, say, building a new food pantry, to, you know, like, I'm just not sure that we're going to be able to find a one-size-fits-all.
I wonder
See what
if
I'm
we
saying?
can't use the state somewhat to help communities or MCs. Try to find that. I mean, it's a huge conversation.
Yeah,
So
but kind of
there's-
what I'm
yeah,
thinking is
very
I
complex.
wonder if, like, we make clear, and I need to maybe look through and make sure it may actually fit just fine under either capital investment, or because if somebody's looking to say, build a new building, potentially we could say, hey, that's a building cost, actually, that's part of the overall project, we'll fund that. But it could also be operational, if they're going out to find money. And then maybe what it is just letting our folks know that are normally accessing those funds, hey, these grant funds are available for you to hire a grant writer to help go out and find. And if you need help connecting with somebody who is an expert in your field, let us know. And that we maybe take that case by case, because there may be some people who've worked with grant writers before and actually have somebody that they feel comfortable with.
I was sitting in the restaurant last night and a person says, well, I have somebody that they were working with that is writing grants now. I mean, there's a lot of, and maybe it's a pool of grant writers that they can access. But formally, what do we do to have phone numbers? They pick up the phone and start the process.
Yeah.
To get something.
So maybe, okay, here's what I'm thinking. There's a funding issue for some of these folks, right? I think we can easily resolve that if you guys are in agreement that the county grant programs, the competitive grant programs, that raising funds fits under those categories. So the money could be used for that. But maybe the other thing we need to do is maybe start with the question to our partners, hey, is there anybody you've worked with in the past that's been an effective grant writer? And we just start a master list, figure out where to keep it, have the contact information. We could even maybe put out just a notice that we're looking for. We are creating a list of, and we're not recommending anybody, we're just putting it on the list. So it's buyer beware.
Sure.
And so, you know, if somebody then raises their hand and says, I'm a grant writer, I have expertise in education, then we just have a little list and put that down.
So, and Liz's steps going forward,
Yes.
how would you suggest that we, I mean, I go to a lot of meetings and I can make that suggestion to the city board. Start, where do we compile that?
I think for now, let's have it land in our offices, in the county court office. So if you get a name, they can either email you and you can forward it on to Teresa and I, or they can reach out to me directly. And then I think Teresa and I can work on a notice that actually just goes out. I need to figure out where I would post it, because I'm assuming it's going to be outside of the community, really, that we're looking for resources. So figure out if there's a listserv out there of grant writers or someplace. I just need to do a little bit of research of what they read and see, and just have them respond to us.
Well,
I
and
think.
maybe if you get a list put together and reach out to those grant writers, they can be competitive in what their cost is when they're grant writing. Because they're on a list of
Because they know,
grant
yeah.
writers.
Exactly.
They know what they're competing with.
And then we just keep a master list, I think. And then for now, I think it can live here, but maybe we revisit where it needs to fit as
we
we
work
can.
through the agenda, a few other things might fall into
Yeah.
all that conversation.
So that would be my suggestion, is one, as we look at the grant program, we make sure that we allow for funding for that. If that's a capacity issue for folks, is being able to afford the grant writer. Two, we go to our community partners and ask them to give us any names of people they've used in the past that have been helpful, that they would recommend, and we start that list. And then three, that Teresa and I put out a sort of request for, it's not even really a request for qualifications, just hey, do you have the skill set? And we sort of add to that master list. And I think we could probably ask Kelly, I think she's sitting in, to maybe even create a little page where that could live, so that folks don't have to call us for that
Right,
information.
Something on the website.
Yeah. So, but I'll explore that piece of it, how best to get it out. But I think that would be my proposed sort of action plan. If that sounds
Yep, at least it starts somewhere.
okay. So with that, let's talk about the county grant.
Well, we talked about, I know earlier, and I just added that in because we had some discussions about a review this fall, which things have been crazy and we hadn't gotten there.
Yeah.
But, and I appreciate the sideboards that have been put on from what used to be and what is now, so say that up front. But I feel like we're too restrictive. And that things can happen outside of those sideboards that we can't react to because it's so restricted. I just like to have a conversation around. I know that there was part of it not letting people come in year round and ask for this and ask for that. We've had those discussions. However, just in what I'm aware of today, and you all know, I felt like we probably underfunded the early learning center this year, and it came back that was because we couldn't change what the budget committee did. I think that's a restriction that's concerns me because we can't react when we might need to react to help our community. Obviously, daycare is a big time issue in that whole conversation. Just a couple other things that are going on that I know of right now is it's looking like through Korea and some advocating there's probably $1 million per county that can come for some smaller type solar projects. I know in Gilliam County that the Arlington school system is looking at trying to figure out how to site a solar project down there. And Gibb sent me an email the other day with the city and was looking at them with the city. And so they may need some grant funding somewhere along the way in that process. I don't know how that's going to look yet because I just heard about it last week. Trying to get those up and going and what's going to take to get, access to that $1 million and those things. And so if we tie ourselves into these parameters and don't let some way that people can make those requests to us, then we hurt our community.
But you don't think there's some pre-planning for that would put them into the?
I think we'll hit a lot of deadlines with some of the funding, with the infrastructure funding and stuff that's coming down the road, but then they hit deadlines we missed because they don't fall in our type of window. Some things could happen, later in the year where we miss those and it's going to be too late to look to the next year. I don't know any of those that I can put specifics on. One other one, David Brown who's a developer for one of the energy companies, wants to meet with me sometime soon about a possible small hydrogen facility and solar facility, maybe up by the airport in Arlington, that he's already started conversations with Metro and trying to figure out how to convert their fleet to hydrogen. And he's looking within Gilliam County of where that can happen so that they would have the opportunity to get their hydrogen fuel here in the county. So those things that are out there are economic development type things that we might constrict ourselves and being able to react to.
I think I take maybe a slightly different perspective. In that one, I think for outside projects that they're building something, for instance, we have 2 grant cycles and we purposely put in 2 grant cycles. So we have a fall and a spring so that if somebody misses the spring window, because the idea, of course, is that you're not going to build a big building in less than 6 months, right? And so the idea that somebody would miss something, I've been on the court for 3 years now, and I can maybe count on one hand the number of applications that we've turned down. So a lot of our folks, if they're in the window, like they need something in June and we're not approving until October, some of them will take the risk and just say, you know what, I'm going to gamble that the court is going to support this. The cities regularly actually do that. The school districts sometimes will float projects, knowing and assuming that if it's a good community project, that we will be behind it. So I would just make that one point. But the other thing is, there's nothing in the competitive grant program that precludes the county from deciding that it wants to have its own economic development project. So say a developer or somebody comes to us, Business Oregon comes to us with an opportunity to recruit a business here. There is nothing in this competitive grant that says that we can't take the economic development funds that are coming in from waste management, which is a totally different funding stream. These are SIP monies that are in the competitive grants, and the waste management money, there's $3.5 million that are sitting there right now that are completely unencumbered. So if somebody came in with the great idea and we decided this is a county initiative, it is so important that we are going to, I don't know, put infrastructure in at Willow Creek and partner with the port. There's nothing that precludes us from doing that. I think the difference is who is generating the idea or the project. So if it's us as a court saying, we want to be making infrastructure investments and we are going to identify where we want to make those investments and we are driving that process, that's one thing. But what I witnessed before I got on the court is that the tail was wagging the dog. So anybody's idea could come in at any point. And part of the reason we structured it the way we did, to get back to our conversation last meeting about public input, was that it allowed our 3 lay people who are part of the budget committee to have a say in how these funds are invested. And so I worry that by saying, reopening it and saying, come one, come all, one, it's much harder for us to compare apples to apples and say, yes, this is, out of these 2 projects, this is the best place for the money. Because if somebody comes in 2 months later and we've already spent the money, then we don't get to fund that project. If we have expectations for folks and we expect, I mean, we have some funders or some recipients who are sitting here, they now know what our process is, right? And they structure their projects knowing, I mean, I just think about, like, if we were the Ford Family Foundation, we give out more money than they do, or roughly, I think, every year. I can't imagine them creating a situation where they're like, we're going to take applications 365 days a year, come anytime you want. It just doesn't, what it does is it prevents, I think, us as a court from being really strategic about where we're placing our investments. And
So just for an example of what we're talking about, and I'm you can fault the enemy or not, but the port didn't get anything here, they were going through transition last year. Say the hydrogen plant up at the airport was a project and it just needed a small grant to move things forward that had to be done pretty rapidly. They're out of that picture. But those are the kind of things I'm talking about. So that would be a funding that through the port, which would follow this.
But am I wrong in that if the port or the cities have some type of economic development project that they need help funding, that we don't just partner with them and do that? They don't need to have a grant, that we could say, we want to partner with you in this, and so, you know, come to us and present, and yes, we want to be involved and we would invest this much money.
I agree with that, but it does fall out of this grant program, and that we aren't funding everything in the program. I know that there's one separate carryover. So, and then if there's, because it's restrictive, I don't think we get some of the applications we would get, therefore we're not going to turn that as we don't get some applications either, just some of the sheer numbers of it. But there's not as many people applying, I don't forget the deadlines again, that's some that we get it.
Yeah, we have to have some kind of structure,
I said that.
and we're trying not to get into that. Come whenever you want, ask for money.
The sideboards that have been placed, we just wonder if there's a way that we get much restricted.
I guess,
and I don't know how to get there and not do what's going on before.
Yeah, and I guess if we had ever had somebody come to us and say, oh gosh, this project didn't move forward because we couldn't access county money, I might feel differently, but I don't think I've heard of anybody who has run into that. I mean, we have not funded some projects before, the port being one of them, because we had felt that we had already funded them, actually, a
They
couple
kept
of
asking for
times.
money for the same thing.
But other than that, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think we maybe turned down the Woolery once, and because I think the budget committee thought that it was premature and that they hadn't raised enough
Well,
funding. So I mean,
I don't want to get away from the budget committee being responsible for looking at those grants.
I don't even know that the budget committee fits into that. So the funding for that line item, yeah. But the specifics to what's spent in that line item, I don't know if that's a budget committee conversation. Work conversation. You know. That's my opinion. You're kind of giving the budget committee the line item details that the department heads work out on their own to do with the grant system.
and see, the way I view it, I mean,
And I don't think anybody on the budget committee would be, I mean, I think you made the statement that they were upset that the court was changing their decision.
Mhm.
The court's on the budget committee. And
Well-
the court
well-
should have the final decision on if they think there's something that is important enough to make a change to that.
I mean, I guess the feedback that I have heard previously from the budget committee was that before they had this formal process in place, people used to come directly to the budget committee and ask for funding. And so a lot of these requests would come in during budget time. The budget committee would discuss them. For instance, in particular, the port, when the port used to have a line item in the county's budget. And so they would be discussing specifically, Nathan could probably speak to this, they would be discussing, okay, here are all the projects the port may want to work on. And the budget committee would say, we don't want the money to go toward this. And then the court, and they wouldn't have the votes for it, right? Because if 3 of the budget committee members say no, it's no. And then the court would overrule that later. And so I can completely respect why some of the budget committee members said, why am I wasting my time providing input in a committee process where the majority should rule if the county court is then going to 10 days later turn around and say, we don't care what you think, and we're going to fund it anyway. And
Yeah, I just don't know if it's a budget committee conversation.
I just appreciate the fact that the budget committee is overseeing what those funds are and where they're going and how much money we're putting into that pot, saying, this is how much money we want to go out and this is the ways we want to spend it, which takes some of that responsibility away from the board. And I appreciate that. Having 6 people or 7 people look at it and getting that much more.
So I'm not
input.
getting anywhere, I get it.
Okay.
I would also say though, in
I
that-
hear what you're saying.
Well,
I do hear you.
It's just, heartburn I've had since before I was elected.
I hear you.
And nothing. The other thing I wondered, we did have some discussion about the structure of the review committee and some other participants in that process too. And I don't know where we're at now, that Kelly's not part of the treasurer's office, if that's going to be in effect, but where are we with that? Where do you think?
I think we would be, I mean, it's open for discussion. We had discussed that that Teresa will be taking on the, one second, our new phone system is ringing. Sorry. Please excuse me. Shut that off. Okay, so Teresa is taking on the administration for Kelly, so that will be transferring over to her. And I think did you already have your meeting with Kelly to?
Yeah.
So they'll be sort of handing the reins over. In terms of who does the initial review, I think that's up for discussion. You know,
I think every year we've had it.
we've
Just
rotated. I
on
think
the
Nathan
committee.
served for quite some time. Judge Padno served for quite some time. Sandy McKay, when he was the court administrator, he served. Teresa served. Kelly served. It's rotated. You've been on it, Pat. So
Maybe it's something we should table for the meeting, but.
yeah, I think they're normally due back March. Is that right? So we have some time before they would actually need to convene and review anything. So if we want to put that back on for discussion, maybe have folks think about who've been part of it, maybe might have some good feedback on what voices should be around that table. The only tricky thing is a lot of our community partners are requesters. And so when we say, oh, we might want community involvement, there's a lot of folks who would probably raise their hands, but would be conflicted out because they have applications in with us. So that's just one of the challenges.
One other thought while we're on this, I lost it just that quick.
Yeah, feel your
It
pain.
happens.
Feel your pain. So as far,
Yeah, and I guess in the other part of the restrictions in this is if there's any questions that are going on and what that process is for answering questions to the applicants, it's kind of a shut the door, things aren't done exactly, dotted i's, crossed t's. And we probably shut the door on some things that might be good for the community to pursue a little further. We could get some more questions answered. I know there's sort of a process if they're asked to submit stuff, but they have not a lot of opportunity in the format of the grant guidelines to make that request in the guidelines. They could say, hey, my application is denied or whatever.
so what you're saying is you would like to see a little more leeway in once the grants are reviewed,
Yeah,
and
if they're
either
not
if you're
just-
denied or accepted. If you're denied, you should get a space of time to try to respond and try to fix what the reasoning behind the denial. I can get behind that. Yes,
I could-
Mr.
I
Nathan.
could speak to that somewhat. Formerly, we did do a review. They brought them in early enough. I mean, if they bring them on a due date, too bad. But if you brought it a week early, yeah, Kelly did definitely go through and clean up financials that weren't up to standard or fix language. So, I mean, maybe that could be a little more formalized. Maybe the due date's a due date, and then there would be a review process afterwards. You could fix it if that's something. But that's, I mean, really, this is modeled on like OWEB, you know, because Sandy worked at the SWCD and was familiar with their grant program, and it's just set up the way theirs is. So but that's really maybe more for professional type grant writers. So,
Well, if you're getting in 1,000 grants, and you know your funding's going to be short, you got to have ways to eliminate it.
Right.
And if you're a small community with just a few applying, do
I think
we not
my
find some
impression,
things that might be
Lisa,
good for the
was
community?
the intent was more making sure that the money was spent as they said it was going to be spent, and making sure that they had an actual budget and those sort of things. So I think our intent was maybe different than like, you know, OWEB. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea to have some type of period of, a response period of 2 weeks or something after you find out you've been denied. And then you can ask those questions, you know, usually the denial says
There's a
why.
little bit of a community feeling that, well, we got shut down, we can't talk to you.
Well, that's too bad, because that's not necessarily true. I mean, and why would you not want to ask some questions if you weren't satisfied with what your denial said? Why would you not say, how can I fix it?
I think that they felt that they could. I think the report was one I know about that. At the time, with a whole bunch of different persons.
Yes, that was a different person.
So one of the perhaps simplest solutions to this is maybe just building into the timeline, the grant review committee, when they meet and when they write up their recommendations, if those are posted to the website with adequate time before the budget committee meets to actually take those up, so that folks can see, because you can see in there whether you're being recommended for funding or not. And that's a pretty good indicator. I don't think we've ever denied funding to somebody that the review committee has said to fund. The only place where we have ever maybe overruled is when somebody has been recommended.
I'm just gonna say, oh yeah, personally, the Gilliam County Historical Museum was recommended by the board, and then the board denied it. But we also thought, well, that was it. You know? So yeah, it's happened since you guys have been on. That was not yet. We asked for
Yeah, I don't remember that.
to be a line item, the Gilliam County Museum. So it has happened.
To be a line
To be a line item or to
Well, no,
submit
we
a,
asked to be, yeah, that was what we asked for, the budget committee, and I think Sandy was on it, Nathan. There was.
Yeah, to be a line item in the budget instead of being grant funded. That's, I mean. that's
That was different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just knew that we'd been recommended, but when I went to court, it got taken off.
Yeah, well, it's the budget process itself, and I've said this 100 times, I need to get a new word evidently, because people, but it's a blue sky, like, people could ask for anything they want as long as they think it fits within Gilliam County's operations, so. You know, we do add stuff in sometimes, it doesn't end up getting approved by the budget committee or adopted.
but it seems to me that if the initial review team is saying, hey, we don't recommend funding, or we recommend a lower amount, funding, but at a lower amount, then that would be a cue to those people who have applied that they may need to come to the budget committee and state their case if they want us to fund them at a higher level. And I think we actually saw that. I mean, the childcare Condon, I'm thinking specifically, was the initial review was that they should be funded, but at a much lower level than their request. They did show up to the budget meeting, right, to state their case. So
And we increased the amount, but we didn't increase it to the ask.
right. But then the other thing, which we've talked about when Leslie was on the court too, is it's also upon us as the budget committee and the deciders. One, we need to make sure we get the information with enough leeway that we can ask those questions, but it is also incumbent on us when we have somebody that is being recommended for less funding, that we do our own due diligence on whether we think that's appropriate or not, and not wait until we're in the budget committee meeting. So if we have questions about why, you know, what annually comes up is why it's so much more expensive to run Condon than it is the Arlington childcares. And so, for instance, it would not be inappropriate for each of us individually to say, hey, I'm going to go up and visit both and see how their operations run and why one is requesting what seems to be a lot more than the other.
Which I did, and they're different operations.
Yeah, totally different.
Exactly. So, but that is incumbent on us. I don't think that's a process problem. That is us not doing our homework before we're making decisions.
Well, okay, there's an example of why I bring this up. Because I did do that, but I missed the budget cycle or the grant cycle I got my mind changed. By
Right.
doing it. So.
So I suspect you won't let it happen again, right?
So I'm sure there's some staffing cuts and some things that happened because of that, because they weren't going to make it in 65,000.
So does it sound reasonable then? Because I do think, to your point, like people who need an opportunity to answer questions. And I think the timeline can really facilitate that, right? Like if part of the problem is if the review comes like days before the packet's going out and, you know, it's like people need time to even be able to get it on their calendars that they need to come to the budget meeting. So what if when Teresa is looking at what when deadlines are supposed to come in, and once Nathan gets the budget calendar sort of set, that we just make sure that there's plenty of leeway in between when the initial review happens, when that information gets to the budget committee, and then how long, and make sure it's on the website so folks can go in and see what the initial recommendation is. It has been in the past as part of the packet, but maybe we need to really let folks know that they need to check their status. And here's the date that they can expect it.
Yeah, because I don't think community in general spends a lot of time looking at the Gannon County website or uses the tool. Maybe they should, but I don't think it happens. So how do we get them to do that, or is there a way we can encourage that? It's a good idea.
The encouragement is that if you are slated to not be funded and your program requires the funding, you better check.
No, I don't disagree with what you're saying.
There's more to it than just turning in your application.
In the argument about I won't make that mistake again. Well, so too bad daycare. I was a new commissioner with a whole lot on my plate and trying to drink out of a water faucet, swim in a mud puddle at the same time, and didn't get there quickly.
Yeah.
But,
No, it absolutely is not. You were one of 6, and the committee decided what it decided.
I have some input. This is Chris Patnode. After being on the committee, can you hear me okay?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just am not sure if there's a need for a review committee. This is just my input and my views on this, having been on the committee. I think it can be done by the county court.
Okay.
And formerly it was actually done in the budget committee meeting itself. So I don't know. I mean, I think review committee's okay.
I actually think it's really helpful because the review committee has to Pat's point about giving folks an opportunity to respond. If the budget committee or the county court is the final say, you have no leeway, right?
Well, that can be put in the process. You can't say that you don't. If you just set a date and make that decision and you have a drop dead, you're in or you're out. Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't put that in the system and that received and reviewed by the court, and if they get a chance to respond before the next court meeting or whatever, you take that away.
So what you're saying, Chris, is that you think that the review committee is the county court, and then we would take it to the full budget committee.
Yes.
Then we already made our decision as part of the budget committee, as opposed to having,
We don't necessarily agree.
well, we don't. That's true. But I guess my thinking is,
Well, I think
we've already made our decision then before we ever get to the budget committee, and I don't think that's makes
Well,
us.
it could be done in the reverse. It could be the budget committee, which includes you, correct?
Yes.
And then go back to the county court for final decision. I feel the committee is a redundant step. That's just me.
Okay.
Well, in my experience on the committee as a new commissioner coming in, it was hard for me just making decisions that, that I regretted later.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and that recommendation was taken pretty seriously to the budget committee, and then the court couldn't change it.
I mean, one of the things I will say that I really appreciate about having the process is when we do ultimately decide that we're going to deny somebody funding, literally an application has been seen by 9 different sets of eyes. And so I think that allows for a diversity of viewpoints. That's important when you're talking about the amount of money that we're investing.
Yeah.
And to cut out a portion of that, I think, again, if it's the budget committee going straight to county court and court, say, overrules the budget committee, you're back to the initial concern of the budget committee members, which is why am I here giving my time if you are just going to do what you want to do anyway?
Well, we're always talking about involving more people in our decisions and hearing more people. So to me, that's what this review committee is doing, is it's giving us that outside look from us and giving us a new perspective from different areas. And that's why we're trying to pick people for the review committee that have different ideas. And I appreciate Chris's, perspective from where she sits, and Teresa's, and, so I agree, 9 people making a decision is much better than 3 people making a decision, because then, we're the
Well,
absolute
okay.
drop dead bad guys
We have
if we
gone
get
full,
denied.
in my opinion, we've gone full circle because we're back to whether it's 3, 6, 9, whatever, you get back to a point that you can't correct what might be a mistake.
But then we have also discussed in this point from one circle
Because-
round to the other is that we agree that we need to put in the process that review time after the decisions have been made, that says, come back to us and say, this is why you were denied. What is your rebuttal to that? And what can we do to help you?
Which I
Past
think is
that.
important, because when I
agree.
look at the last budget cycle or grant cycle, when I came to the realization that we might have short funded, in my opinion, it was too late to do anything.
Yeah.
Because I didn't find out until after the budget committee
Yeah,
had made their
No,
decision.
point taken. And we're just, right now, we're talking in circles because we're talking about the same thing over and over. So what we agree on in this context is that we need to put some review response time so that people who have been denied have a chance to rebut and fix whatever we think is holding us back from funding or short funding, so that we can try to make everybody successful.
Okay.
Agree? Is that an agreement? Are we in agreement on that?
Yes, and I think that is something we can easily build into the calendar. Once we kind of get a sense from Nathan about when he wants the budget committee to meet, we can just back out from there when the review team would meet, and then back out from there when the applications need to come in, and that can drive the entire
Budget count is kind of boring, it's basically the same every year.
except for 2 years ago,
Right.
except for when we have a
I
pandemic.
don't like surprises.
So yes, I think is what we're saying. And so for those who are listening, who typically take or accept grants from the county, be advised that we are adjusting that timeline to allow you the opportunity to come before the budget committee if needed and
Well,
state your case.
They've always had the opportunity to do that.
Yes.
I don't want, they've always
It's
had
a
the
public
opportunity to
meeting.
talk about- Yeah. Always talk budget,
But sometimes people need the
but
encouragement.
maybe they
So
weren't aware.
consider this the encouragement that if you feel like the review team has it wrong
Yeah.
about your application, you have an opportunity. It is a public meeting to state your case to the 6 of us as the budget committee. Enough said?
Yes.
Okay, let's
Thank
move
you.
on. 5.4 is consider approval of bid for elected officials salary survey. Okay, so back in October, we had the compensation board meet or join us for the meeting and kind of outline what they would like to see in a salary survey. So remember when they met last spring, they said it might be beneficial to have some updated salary survey numbers, and they kind of went through a whole long list of things that they wanted to see. I took that list and followed up with 2 firms, one Tree Hill Consulting, which did, I think, the salary review for North Central Public Health.
Well, they reviewed an old salary study. They didn't actually do the one. They reviewed and updated off of the old study. 17.
So I reached out to them. They said actually that they are swamped and couldn't take on another project. So they declined to provide a proposal. HR Answers did submit one, and that is in your packet. Given the potential cost, which is up to $5,500, the court is actually able to do a direct procurement if that is what you would prefer to do. We don't actually need 3 bids for for that amount of money for a consultant. I think that threshold is something crazy like 100,000 even before it triggers needing the bids. So we are well underneath that. So what I would like from you guys today is just some direction. Are you happy with this bid? Would you like me to ask for additional bids so you have some other options to look at, or do you want to go in another direction? And I will say, just for the record, that several members of the union reached out expressing some concerns that we were about to spend this much money doing this project, and pointed to the LGPI salary survey, which was completed in 2017, as something that should be used
Which we
instead.
always use as part of our materials anyway, and it was rejected, but the compensation for it, they want.
An analogous situation. I think the interesting thing here, Katie, is this Mark Meadows has been now at the House referred him for criminal prosecution.
The League of Oregon Cities does one, so I provided part of that. And I also called all the surrounding counties and talked to them and got numbers. And they want something more in depth that was done externally, which that's fine.
Well, I don't think we should, we gotta be careful ignoring a request from one of the boards.
Of course. I mean, ultimately, they're voting.
And I know y'all got that email from Chris this morning on a state statute about including the state in that, or what's the,
Yeah, that was not in the bid when I read
it's
it.
not in the bid.
So that is something I can go back to them.
Yeah, I think it needs to be part of the, make sure that it's included if it's a state statute.
Right.
I mean, they do quote to us what the statute is, which includes annually review the compensation paid to persons comparably employed by the state of Oregon. So it is in their
Yeah.
thing.
Mine has been an oversight in description.
Yeah, I mean, they do, like I said, they quote, I gave them the statute of what we needed, and they quote it back to us. So I feel like that's an easy, if the court decided to go in this direction, to just clarify that, hey.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little
Follow that.
uncomfortable with one bid.
I'm happy to go try to find another.
I know that, well, Teresa had reached out to me because it must be hard to find somebody to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are probably only so many people who do this kind of work. I think a lot of folks do it in-house in the
Maybe.
bigger counties, so.
Maybe find a frame of reference with what Wintry Hill done for the health district. So just see if it's reasonable. Would that raise your level of comfort?
I mean, you could maybe, Pat, if you felt like you could follow up maybe with Shelley and ask what that bid was.
Yeah, to see how,
At least
if
then you
this
Yeah,
can
at
is
least
way
it would
off
give us
the
an
mark,
idea.
or if
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
yeah,
that would,
at least that would be a comparison of two bids as
Sure.
opposed to.
she's
Yeah.
not on anymore, is she?
She's
No,
on this.
she jumped off. So how about this? Why don't we go ahead and table this until the first meeting in January? And then that would give you some time to circle back with North Central and get a sense of what One Tree Hill quoted them for their, and then that'll give us a sense of this is a reasonable amount.
Sounds fair.
Okay, so to be continued. I can though also,
Let's see.
do you want me though to circle back with them and add, make sure that they're clear that the scope needs to include the state of Oregon and make sure that that doesn't
Yes.
impact the final cost? Okay.
Because if we come back and it is, within the range, then, maybe this is the firm we want to use. And if we can clarify that, that'll put us that much closer to making the decision.
Okay, so I will make a note to follow up with them this afternoon. Okay. All right, let's move on. Anything else on that one? Okay, let's go into new business. 6.1 is consider approval of amendment to hardship leave policy in 2021-2022 employee handbook. So this is coming to you from both Ellen and I. We right before you came in, Pat, we had approved a new employee handbook that had been long outdated. And we had used a template from CIS's HR folks that had some sort of template language regarding hardship leave, and we missed it. We missed some problems that it created when we came through, after we passed it. And so Ellen has been trying to navigate this with employees who are trying to use hardship leave. But the provisions that are problematic, there's one in there that basically says if an employee has retirement, disability, other supplemental income, they're not eligible for donated leave. It also limits an employee's ability to use hardship leave for pandemic-related illnesses. So if somebody had a really long hospitalization with COVID, potentially it might prevent them from using hardship leave. And then also illnesses or injury that might take longer than the what is protected under FMLA or OFLA, which, you know, for our people, when you need this kind of leave, you are very sick. And so generally, we are basically stripping in the current policy hardship leave away from the people who probably need it most amongst the Gilliam County family. So, and in addition to that, there is also a phrase about what the hardship leave can be used for. And it says, as a result of serious illness or injury. One of the issues we have with that is that we're not sure how that would be interpreted with regard to maternity leave.
So why is maternity leave a hardship?
Yeah, why is it?
I don't understand why maternity leave is even being placed in the hardship leave,
Right.
because maternity leave is maternity leave.
Maternity problems within a maternity leave.
But that would fall under serious injury or illness, and that, to me, if you have a premature child, you have, you know, those types of issues, or you have gestational diabetes, and those are a serious illness that you have to address. But maternity leave itself is just maternity leave.
I believe it needs to be reworded, because if you read that sentence, do you read it, it applies to employee only or employee/family?
Mm-hmm.
I read it as saying the employee themselves.
Right. So do we want to read that?
Or do we want to read?
Somehow, I'm not including maternity. I just think, what if somebody's spouse is dying of cancer? You know, there's different scenarios, but maybe you want to leave it just to apply to the employee only.
And I
I'm
guess
not sure.
I view it a little bit differently. I view it, I don't see a distinction between, to me, it's cleanest to have this, what hardship leave is applicable to, be consistent with what FMLA and OFLA cover. So that there's not, so FMLA and OFLA say, whether we think so or not, that maternity leave is a covered leave. And so to me, the hardship committee, when they can determine whether they feel like that is a legit use of, I mean, it's not, people who apply for hardship don't automatically get it. The hardship committee decides whether they're going to grant that. To me, in terms of administering it though, and defining what it covers.
I don't see how maternity leave as it is falls into hardship. I guess it could be a mistake.
And I guess the point we want to, how do you want to word that? Who this applies to?
And I guess I view that having just had a baby, I will say that it is a hardship to ask someone, for instance, who's had a C-section or had a difficult pregnancy, complications where maybe they are going in to see their doctor once a week, and so therefore burning through vacation leave, and then have a C-section where medically they're not cleared for 6 weeks and expecting them to take that leave unpaid.
But that's a serious illness. That's a serious illness then.
Yeah, but we are
So
asking.
why are we separating maternity leave from any other? I mean, if you have complications from pregnancy, then that's a serious illness.
And a C-section
I don't think
is
you
an
need to
automatic
define
complication.
anything. What's that?
A C-section would be an automatic complication.
Yes, and so to me, you're trying to be specific about maternity leave when if there's a problem, then it should fall under the term serious illness.
I'm not being specific about maternity leave.
But we're saying the word.
I'm saying though, that the definition under state and federal law includes maternity leave, what is protected leave. And so by leaving that gap, what you are doing for our youngest, by definition, it's our youngest childbearing employees who are also, by the way, compensated the lowest, is that you are saying to them that in order to access what is federally and state protected leave, they need to do it unpaid, that they cannot access hardship leave. And to me, that should be left up to the hardship committee. I don't want to exclude their ability, even if they don't have a complicated delivery, they may have to exhaust their leave leading up to actually delivering. And do we really, for young mothers and fathers, want to say, well, you get to decide whether you're going to afford your rent and to pay your family, or whether you're going to come to work a couple of weeks after you've delivered a baby.
And I think a lot of people perceive hardship is maybe abused, but I think it was established in 1998, and there's been very few requests for hardship leave. It is hard to define.
Well, and I guess just in my mind that a normal pregnancy maternity process is covered. And in the hardship side, so what if you got a bank, so it doesn't get used much, that doesn't mean it couldn't.
Right.
You have a bank, you use it up on a regular normal pregnancy maternity leave. Somebody has a hardship and your bank is empty, how fair is that to the true hardship?
We go out and ask. People are very generous.
Mhm.
We go out and ask.
I don't
We're
know how
low,
the
we
bank
go out
works,
and
because I've
Yeah.
never been anywhere.
Right. We go out and request.
I have never heard of a hardship bank.
Yeah, I don't know if it's ever been an issue. But if that did happen, we would go out, yeah, and people are very generous. Employees are very generous with it. So I guess that's a hard wording to define.
Well, and so if it's ambiguous and you can't tell, what is a serious illness, then your committee of representatives who make the decision determine what's a serious illness.
Correct.
I just don't want us to open it up to say, I guess if you say people aren't abusing what is determined as hardship, then I'm not sure.
Who determines whether it's abuse?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's a process when somebody is taking extended leave. They're applying for FMLA or OFLA. There are we are determining at an administrative level whether the leave qualifies, whether it's protected. To me, it's already defined. There's no ambiguity. This is making sure that our employees' ability to access leave, hardship leave, is in alignment with what is already protected under federal and state. They've already defined what's protected.
But they don't define hardship leave. It's not a state.
I mean, if that's the case, I mean, I don't understand why we use the hardship leave bank, because why wouldn't, couldn't county court just grant them on leave? It was inappropriate. Not.
If we wanted to
That
have
opens up
to
a whole
reopen the union
can of worms.
negotiations
Right?
and then
But I
get
mean-
into
but I mean,
people's
the protection
medical.
under Federal and state law is just that we'll hold your job. It's not that we'll pay you to be gone.
Right.
for 12 weeks.
But Guy, I mean, what kind of a workplace Do we
That's
want a
normal
workplace where young people
That's a normal workplace.
can't have,
Normal like anywhere else.
well, in this country, in other countries, they provide paid leave
Yeah, but that's.
and they support
We don't
young
live-
mothers.
We don't live it, thank God.
They get paid leave. They get paid leave. They need to account for it and they know that pregnancy is a choice.
Yeah, I think if we hadn't used brought in the term maternity leave as a problem, for a regular birth without complications. To me, if there's complications and you need extra money, then you fall under serious illness. And I'm not, hey, listen, my children were born in the late 70s. I had a full-time job, and I know we're not going back, we're going forward, but I got to I had to save my 2 weeks of vacation. There was no family, there was nothing else. I got 2 weeks from the time I had my child, and then I had to go back to work full-time, and I had to find childcare for a newborn infant. So I'm all about helping people.
Yeah.
And the families, but I think hardship is different than what you're trying to make it be.
Should we make the committee make that decision?
Yeah. I think that's why we have a committee.
Well, it's another one of those deals. Are we going to let the committee make recommendations, do their job, or are we not?
I feel like this language does not allow the committee to make that decision.
Yes,
That
you
was
have
my
to
point.
correct- You have to correct those.
Is
Because they don't have because someone may not have a serious illness or injury, but they want hardship because they've used up all their leave.
Yeah, because they may have a sick kid that has cancer, because they may have a husband that has cancer. It doesn't allow for that in here. It doesn't allow, this was my point, that this does not comply with what OFLA and FEMLA protect. And all I'm asking is that the policy for hardship reflect what OFLA and FEMLA protect.
Well, it's no detriment to the county financially, because this is other employees giving their time. And so whatever the committee wants to do, if you guys want to strike that, I don't care, because it doesn't affect the county financially. We're already putting our money into the other employees. If they want to give up their time, I don't care.
So I'm having, maybe I'm not looking at all this. So the change that I don't see in the
Well, the change is they want to strike where you see the yellow, where it says serious result of a serious illness or injury. They want to strike that entirely. It just is going to be for employees who are about to exhaust or have exhausted their accumulated sick and vacation leaves. So anybody, if I used up all my vacation and sick leave, and then I had pneumonia and had no time coming, then I could come in and go to the committee and say, or I broke my foot, or I almost did that yesterday.
So explain to me in this where including family members falls into what we're talking about.
It does not.
I haven't seen that anywhere.
It does not. This is only strictly for the employee as far as I can see.
But the argument that Liz just made was that we need to have the families included if your kid has cancer and it affects you. I don't see that in any of this documentation. That's being added in.
I'm suggesting that by not specifically saying as a result of serious illness or injury, that gives a broader scope to the hardship board to determine, and then they can look at whether it's a family member, and my suggestion is that that goes along with what is federally and what is currently protected leave from federal and a state perspective. There are definitions within there. I don't think we as a court need to put that in the policy. I'm just stating that by removing that, that gives the hardship committee the ability to look at what the statute says and compare that with their own personal judgments on whether that complies with what they think is a hardship.
So because this doesn't really fall.
Can I say something?
Shania, yes, sorry. Trying to figure out who.
No, that's okay.
Go ahead,
That's
Shania.
okay. I just would like to say I'm really appreciative of being able to apply for the hardship leave. I had a lot of events leading up to my pregnancy with my daughter having to have surgery, a major surgery with hip dysplasia, having to take time off for that, having gestational diabetes, having to go to the doctor's office every week, if not twice a week, to be checked on. And then after everything, having to have a C-section. And I didn't even, when I applied for hardship leave, I didn't ask for a specific amount, even though someone suggested that I do so. I just kind of left it as I would like to leave it up to what they feel is appropriate for my situation. So I just want to say that I really appreciate being able to even apply for that. So just thank you.
Thanks, Shania. I think, April, did you have your hand up?
Not from what this says.
April,
There's no hardship.
did you have something? Maybe not.
Oh, I think there is.
I did. Sorry about that. I had to come back to my computer. I was working on something else.
Go ahead.
Just being a person that has used hardship leave before, and I know that we have to go to a committee. They're very generous. I've given time to the hardship committee, and I've also been given time from the hardship committee, and they are very generous in what they give. In fact, I even asked to return what I hadn't used for somebody else to use. And I have not read. I was kind of looking for, I wanted to read what you guys were looking at. I'd like to look through that, but yeah, my question is, does it actually specify what the hardship is? Because I mean, and what necessarily is the difference between the regular maternity leave? And I know you used maternity leave as an example, but haven't we given time to people that have used or that had sick spouses in the past? Aren't we able to do that?
I believe so, but the way the policy reads, there's a question of whether that would be allowed.
I guess I'm wondering, rather than take out as a result of serious illness or injury, we don't add in a statement about being inclusive of family members and define what those family members are.
Well, and that's what Family Leave Act does.
Does
Because
it
that
get
gets
suited?
complicated too.
Mhm. And when
But
they,
this is a hardship leave policy in an employee handbook for Gilliam County.
Yes.
Period. It's not Finland. It's not anything else. It's a hardship leave for Gilliam County employees.
Right, but we have to put rules, we have to apply rules to them and it's getting
Well, I just
complicated.
suggested one, and I don't understand why that's so complicated.
Well, I think it's open-ended anyway. It doesn't say whether this result of serious illness or injury is just for the employee or the family or,
It doesn't, it's how you.
and
read
to
it.
me, that leaves it open to the committee. And I'm not sure why we're debating it quite so much because there's no financial impact, thank you for the word, on the county in any way, shape, or form. This is strictly between the employees and how they react to each other. And if they feel that whoever's applying, if what they're asking for is legitimate, and then more power to them.
So how are we gonna word that?
Oh, I think it's open for interpretation.
so It sounds like on the issue of the phrase as a result of serious illness or injury, it is the consensus of the court not to modify that language and to just maybe state on the record that the intent is for the hardship committee to interpret that as they see fit with regard to whether that applies to sick family members.
Yes, because
Okay.
we're gonna have 1,000, you could have 1,000 different scenarios that change with each family and each situation that they may fall in. Yeah, it's just,
Should be a case by case consideration.
and I don't think we want to say that we want to take out serious illness or injury, because we want to be sure that we know that what they're looking at is, that we haven't, my heart goes out to people that have those issues, and if I was on the committee and I could see that there were all these mitigating circumstances that led up to the fact that once the baby was born, that they were out of leave for these reasons, then I would be more than happy to give them hardship leave, because those are circumstances beyond their control.
Do we need to add employee/family though? I mean,
Do we?
I don't know.
But do we?
because-
That was my suggestion, but I don't know what that time with it or not.
I mean, the issue is, how do you define family? Right.
Exactly.
And
And again, that's an interpretation
This
by
is-
the committee.
And this is why I keep going back to FMLA and OFLA clearly define it. Who is eligible and who isn't. And so to me, that is the cleanest because those are the things that Ellen has to implement anyway when somebody is applying for FMLA or OFLA. That's how we're determining eligibility. So it makes it really complicated if we as a court are trying to define something differently than how the state and feds are doing that. That means Ellen's got to keep 3 different sets of eligibility in her head, which is not ideal.
Well, is it, Ellen's got to keep her head of the hardship committee makes a decision.
Well, Ellen's the one that's administering most of those, and the hardship leave, when it's coming through, we're double checking that, hey, the hardship leave, the hardship committee has a responsibility to ultimately determine that, but there's also an administrative role to make sure that the person, whoever's applying, is fitting whatever the court has established as policy. So once it gets the okay that yes, this can go on to the hardship committee, that's fine, but we have to make sure that our policy isn't preemptively kicking people out of even going to the hardship committee.
So does the court decide who gets to apply for hardship or not? I don't think so.
We do based on the policy. If we prematurely kick people out and say that only people who have these certain circumstances are eligible for hardship,
I
then
think it's too open-ended to kick anybody out there.
I think so too. I think it's just so open that the committee can make any decision they want. Does anybody disagree with that that's read this? That this is so open that,
And I'm on the committee and it's very hard.
oh, I'm sure it's very difficult.
It's very hard to say no to someone.
Yeah.
But I don't know,
Which is
I don't
fine.
have an easy
Which is fine, because they made their
But your
case.
heart's this big.
answer.
They made their case apparently.
My heart's 2 sizes smaller, and I've been on the committee, and it's very difficult.
Yes, I know,
Two
Mr.
sides-
Grinch,
2 sizes too small.
Right, but-
Mr. Grinch. And it is
But no,
difficult.
seriously, it's- I think, and that
Well, then if
we've
that's-
had a good debate, and I feel confident the committee's made a good decision.
I defer to the committee to define what serious illness or injury is. And who
Who it applies to.
it applies to.
Okay, there still is, okay, I think we have that piece resolved, but there still is an issue with the 3 other paragraphs, which are problematic. So the first one is if we had somebody who had, say, long haul COVID, who was out, currently the policy, it reads like they might not be able to access hardship leave, which I don't think is the intent. Again, if we're going with serious illness or injury,
Where are
long-term,
we looking at this?
This,
page 36, first paragraph. Does not,
Not solicit donated leave for time loss related to pandemic illness.
Doesn't make sense, does it? I don't even know why that was in the CIS handbook. I want to ask him, what are we looking at that wrong? Are we reading that
It's like,
incorrectly?
why is that there?
I don't know.
It-
A
yeah.
lot of, I know that Capco has a COVID-19 leave policy that has expired, where they said you would get leave and now you will not.
I think
get
probably, yeah,
leave.
the problem in industry, I
So-
think, has been reoccurring
Right.
incidences with one employee and exposure.
Mhm.
And so they continue to go back and take 14 days off because they've been exposed. And somehow within the industry to stay in business, they've had to put a lid on that so it couldn't get abused.
Mhm. Yeah, I think when, I mean, the context when we were working on this was before the vaccines were out, and every time somebody had an exposure, they had to be quarantined, was sort of the protocol at the time. And so potentially you'd have people burn through their vacation time very quickly over an exposure because of the guidance that we had to follow. And so I suspect CIS was putting that in there for some of their bigger counties,
Yeah.
that it cost a lot of money when they were trying to cover that. But in this place now, it really, if we're going to give the hardship committee leeway, then it seems to me that striking this allows them to then look at the situation and see whether it's appropriate. Okay. The second paragraph on that page talks about if an employee happens to have had retirement disability, short or long-term disability insurance, or other supplemental income, they're not eligible to receive donated leave. Again, that suggestion from here, and I think this is born out of experience. Ellen has mentioned that usually when folks are really needing this, they may have one of these, and they still may be exhausting that and need support. And
Well, that,
so,
and short-term disability is only 60% of your salary, so you're not even earning.
And 11
That it helps, but it's not.
And it's employee paid.
And I'd like to answer or make a comment
April,
to that too.
yep,
Sorry, I'm thinking I'm talking over you. I don't mean to. Is that I had short-term disability, and Ellen and I we were working really hard at it the whole time that I was off work. I actually did not receive most of my short-term disability until a week after I had returned to work, because it was so hard to get. So, employees definitely need something in the meantime, because if I would have banked on short-term disability, I would have never paid my bills.
I hear that,
And not everybody gets approved for it.
right?
Right.
So, by reading that, it's like, oh,
so
I
it
didn't
would,
get approved for it. Well, too bad you don't get donated leave.
yeah, it kicks them out of the hardship leave,
Yeah.
even asking for it. So the recommendation would be to strike that paragraph as well. And then the third one, again, I'm not sure, I think this was a CIS thing, but it reads, if otherwise qualifying, donated leave may be used to provide paid family and medical leave that would otherwise be unpaid, but may not extend the length of family and medical leave entitlement. I'm not sure why that's in there. The entitlement is pretty clear in federal and state law. In the policy that deals with FMLA and OFLA, it's very clear on what the leaves are. So I'm not sure why we have this in here. So again, I think it was an oversight when we took the template. We just skipped right over it. And then now we're saying that we should have maybe pulled those out. So the recommendation would be that we go ahead and amend the policy by striking those 3 paragraphs. And if the court was in agreement, I would go ahead, Teresa and I would just go through, update those, and then reissue as just a revised and make a note, obviously in the record, that it was revised independently of the overall review, just because we don't know who's going to get sick, and we'd rather not wait for the larger handbook review if somebody really needs the leave. So
I'm in agreement to strike those.
Me too.
okay, so would you guys like me to make the motion?
Sure.
Okay.
That would be good.
I move to amend the hardship leave policy by striking the 3 paragraphs highlighted in the attached and to direct county court staff to update the 2020-2021 employee handbook with these amendments.
And I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we amend the hardship leave policy by striking the 3 paragraphs highlighted in the attachment and to direct county court staff to update the 2020-2021 employee handbook with these amendments. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are an hour and 40 minutes in. Do you guys need a break? Or you want to keep plowing through? I think we probably should go Chris, 'cause she has-
We have your discussion would always last longer than anybody wants them to.
Okay, so
Take a break.
2 of them in a row.
hold on.
2 of them in a row.
Time out. Time out. So apparently Chris Fitz has a thing at noon.
Oh,
And so can
Maybe we should do
we
that
do
now.
her thing and then we'll
Yes.
continue on?
yes. I'll go get
So
her.
we're just gonna hang out for a minute. Teresa's gonna go get her.
Sounds good.
Everybody act cool.
Okay,
And-
yes, let's move that up. and
So
get
I'm
it
gonna
done.
move what would have been 6.5 up.
That sounds like a plan, because again, this guy has stuff on the agenda that takes forever to talk about.
Why are you so difficult, Pat?
It's in his nature. We get things done. Being difficult. Having hearty discussions.
Oh, yeah. We're giving the people their money's worth today.
Everybody file in. We're doing it. We're doing it. We're doing it.
She's gonna know something's up when she sees her mom.
Right?
Hide. Duck down.
Put a mask on. You like in the front row.
My plan is to read it into the record.
Okay.
And vote on it. Does
Okay.
that sound good?
Yep.
And
Good for me.
I asked Teresa to include it in the minutes so that it's in there for all eternity.
Very good.
That whole proclamation. This is my favorite part of the meeting. I've been looking forward to this for like 2 weeks.
Good stuff.
Sure, man, it's
We never look forward to you having stuff, because it takes forever. You have generated some very good conversations.
Mhm. And frankly, kept bringing things back up that I'm like, oh yeah, I needed to get to that, but it's on my long and growing to-do list. And then I'm like, shoot, grants. Oh yeah, that's right. I owed you guys something on that, didn't I? Hopefully she doesn't come off tonight.
Well, or still be on some conference call or something.
I'm afraid she's gonna tell Teresa, I can't, I'm busy. That's what I'm afraid. She's gonna be like, nope, not doing
You
it.
have to have your input in that.
It's critical. The court is waiting for you.
We can all hear the argument she's putting up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Teresa's gonna have to drag her.
And the sheriff got called out.
Oh, yeah, she's so sorry.
I know, so he can't
That's
order
too
her
bad.
to come
Oh,
out.
he can't. Yeah.
He was there for when they gave her the actual
Yeah.
award. She's probably gonna kill us.
Tell her she got tax selection back.
That would be hilarious. We just wanted to come up and say, we're giving you track.
We can now.
Right.
Hey, Chris, come on in. Okay, we're moving on to the next item. This is a proclamation expressing gratitude to Chris Fitzsimmons for 28 years of exemplary service to Gilliam County. I'm going to go ahead and read it. Proclamation in the County Court for Gilliam County, Oregon, a proclamation expressing gratitude to Chris Fitzsimmons for 28 years of exemplary service to Gilliam County. Whereas Chris Fitzsimmons began her career at Gilliam County on July 15th, 1993, and whereas throughout her 28 years of public service, Chris has exemplified professionalism, leadership, innovative problem solving, and community-centered collaboration, traits that are essential for meeting the unique public safety challenges of our rural county. And whereas Chris can be counted on to tell it like she sees it, to advocate tirelessly for the resources our community needs, and to push for improvements to processes and systems that not only benefit Gilliam County, but all of Oregon too. And whereas Chris often serves as a mentor and resource to new emergency managers in neighboring counties, generously sharing her experience and knowledge to make our region more prepared and resilient. And whereas throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, Chris has been indispensable to our communities, offering community partners accurate information, sound advice, and help in solving whatever challenges they're facing. And whereas Gilliam County is a better, safer place for her efforts. Now, therefore, the County Court of Gilliam County hereby proclaims its gratitude to Chris Fitzsimmons for her 28 years and counting of exemplary service. Don't worry, she's not retiring, to Gilliam County, and offers congratulations to her for receiving the Emergency Managers Command Council Special Recognition Award.
Thank you. There it is. I move to approve the proclamation as presented.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the proclamation as presented. Is there further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That is so funny because I'm on a call right now with the Eastern Emergency Managers. And they said, well, what are 2 or 3 things you're working on? I said, well, the first thing was my retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the court is going to take a break because we are exhausted. Okay, we are back in session and we will go into 6.2, which is discuss Gilliam County vacant staff responsibilities. Pat, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I called it positions and responsibilities. It's really about responsibilities, I think, when you look at it. And I wanted to go down a list of what I see, and you can explain to me whether I'm looking at this correctly or not. But we have an HR situation, position, whatever it is, to deal with. We have, whether you call it IT or support, that sounded like some that's going to be passed on to Teresa with plans, but my ideas on that is it's really a little bigger job than just contracting out IT services to another company, because when you're looking at updating the website, let's say carrying new equipment and setting that equipment up for a user who's going to do those responsibilities, because it looks to me like they have to be handled in-house. Where does that type of responsibility go? Transportation director, I'm not sure about Commissioner Wilkins, but I know for myself, I feel like I've been left in the dark on what's going on with transportation, period. In the end, I don't get it, I don't understand it, and I'd like to be in the loop on that, but there's obviously some responsibilities there, grant writing, whatever, that we have planned on, I think. And then, I don't know how much it's out there, I did talk to this morning, but Terry's going to retire in March, so down the road, we're looking at our road department office manager position, and I have some ideas on what that needs to look about after a year feeling my way into the road department and weed department a little bit, and I've got some ideas of what I think we need to do going forward. One being, I really strongly feel that we need to use the IRS system, which will cost us any money, to implement a equipment tracking program to get on top of our equipment and take care of it better. And some of that can even tie the finances in regards to depreciation and purchasing. And those systems I'm extremely familiar with 3 or 4 of those type of systems, and I've been working with Brian Worley with AOC on what this IRIS module is and how well it would fit into those kind of needs, so that we're not just guessing or servicing rigs who think they need to be serviced.
Right.
When, we get too busy and don't do it. We have vehicles I'm concerned about in Arlington that have not been serviced for when. And I haven't asked, but I don't know what the process is, but there's, and maybe it would even include a discussion with the sheriff's department on tracking their equipment too. And the sheriff's.
Well, even the transportation.
But that whole
Fall into
position, and it's kind of been communicated to me that there's room for some more responsibilities there, but what that looks like, there's some data entry involved with that. And there's initially, when you set up a program like that, there's some data entry, extensive data entry, to get your database in place, which I'm really familiar with because I've done that 3 or 4 different times. It's not that big a deal for our fleet here. I don't think it's not that big a fleet, up in much bigger fleets, but it is something I think is really important. I don't think it's time to do it while we're at her, that it's something going to transition, but there's responsibilities in there, and some of those shared, and I'm really confused about why she is reported to chief of staff instead of reporting to the roadmaster, and then I see there's a conflict. Roadmaster, lead master, but it looks like the version which she has in the org chart.
Mhm.
And so I'd like to, have some discussion about it. And then I also think that even our city recorder position is maybe something we should take a look at, because it takes a lot of time. And we're gonna take on more responsibilities, Teresa.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, you said city.
I mean,
Said city
not city
recorder.
recorder, county court recorder.
Administrative
Okay.
Court
assistant.
recorder, and I know that was farmed out before and probably went away when I wasn't on court, so I don't know. And my guess is that it was part of figuring out how to fund the increase in salaries with the court team and how all that package went together. Maybe it's time to look at some of that again. On your shoulders, if it's something that moved. So those are some of the initial ideas. I just think that all this kind of fits together in a sense, and should we look at it together?
So one thing with regard to the road office manager that I've noticed as well, that I think there's maybe an efficiency that we could realize in the transition, is that currently I think Terry spends quite a bit of her time taking handwritten timesheets, putting that into the system, and that goes up to Ellen. And my understanding from Brian is that that can be automated, where if we have terminals in the road shop, they can enter their timesheets, Dewey can sign off on those, and then those can go directly into Ellen's system, so that we're not needing that sort of more menial admin type thing, which is obviously essential. We want our folks paid, but I think that's an area where maybe technology can sort of give us some efficiencies. So I am definitely supportive in the areas where we can use IRIS to find those efficiencies in that position. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's a program, for those who are uninitiated, from IRIS that AOC built specifically for county road departments. And so it really, I think, would be a great, the more that we can use that.
There's some other modules and stuff to that, like tracking actual road maintenance and some of that I haven't looked at with those yet, that we don't utilize, that would probably be valuable when we can get there. But the equipment is a good place to start, because, I mean, it even helps you determine you're putting too much money in this. We need to look at
Replacing it.
So and Pat, you went to the meeting with the elected officials last week, correct? Do you want to give us sort of a sense of what you came away with from that meeting?
I would say mainly and mostly it was the separation of HR and chief of staff. I think that there's some the chief of staff position, however we look at that, needs to maybe be, at least they feel, looked at it in a way that is more of an administrative function, and there was things in the job description for Lisa that were not very detailed in this. When we looked at some of the functions like red zone manager and some things that, what was your plan in economic development that were really under other duties as assigned by the judge rather than specified in the job description. And if there's a need there, and I, you know, when Leanne was going out, I was running for county commissioner and all that stuff was going on, there was at that time a definite feel that it's way too much for one person, maybe not enough for two, but and HR was in part of that conversation too, but so, you know, I think there's a lot to talk about here.
Well,
I'm
and I
not
think-
sure how to go forward with that, but I would really think it's important that we consider everything that's on the table, how we can, you know, when we start going out to fill positions, what are we really looking for?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to look at that, what we term chief of staff, and maybe alter even our title for it, because to me, it's administrative, not assistant, but administrative help to the county court, not just the judge, but the entire county court, and also a liaison and support to the rest of the elected officials, someone that they could come to and say, you know, can you help me find this or that, or.
There's a little bit of a feeling that there's a discomfort from the elected officials to even go downstairs.
Yeah, well, that's neither here nor there.
And so, you know, how do we get that so that
Well, I think those are personalities too that we need to think about. And to your point of whether there's an administrative person and an administrative assistant, I hesitate to say administrator, because to me, that term is used by counties for someone who is overseeing everything.
it's more designed to
And that isn't what we're looking for.
a chartered court of five.
Right,
commissioners,
exactly.
Well-
in place.
Right.
And by statute, the administrator is me.
Exactly.
By statute.
Exactly.
So we
So
would
just-
have to be changing the entire makeup of the government in order
Right.
to change
So
that,
we don't want to.
which is a broader, yeah.
We just need to find a title that, because there's some heartburn with the title chief of staff, you don't know that. And in order to change that culture that has been created, by what means, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
We need to change that culture so that whoever we put in this position is, you know,
And then
gets a
another-
fair
and
shake.
then Another part of all of this is what is the county court's participation as a court body in these processes? And to me, and we had some discussions last fall when we were going through some of the personnel issues. And I guess that, you know, when you have a department lead, they should be able to hire, discipline, terminate within that department without a lot of input by the court.
Mhm.
But when you have department leads, the court needs to be, I believe the court needs to be involved in those processes. And I think it's really puts an individual in a bad place to make those decisions all by themselves. And if you have an employee that is going through a disciplinary process and reaches to a point that termination is a possibility, that looks to me like it would work a lot better for the whole community. If the court would do an executive session, that evidence be presented to the court, and then they come out and make that decision. And they had a good example of how well that works on the north end with the health district. And a unified decision on those kind of things with facts that can't be presented to the public, but that decision is presented to the public is powerful.
Okay, two things on that. One, would your intention be that that be everybody in the building?
No, I just said no to that. I said, within departments, I don't, but when you're talking about department leads and heads of departments, I think it's.
So help me understand what distinguishes why, for instance, we might give the sheriff complete autonomy over making personnel decisions, but wouldn't give me autonomy. We're both elected officials. We're both paid to oversee those
Well, I'm
departments.
sure there's resistance to that, but my opinion of that is it's the county money and personnel. If they're paying us their payroll, they should make a decision. And you're really just talking about sheriff. I don't, that's an elected official, you can't terminate, so it's.
No, that isn't
No,
what she's saying.
I'm saying his staff.
She's
Are we
saying,
saying that the court would make hiring and firing decisions in the sheriff's office?
No, and I don't think they would make them in the transportation office, but they would with the transportation police, because that was a salary person of the court. As is the roadmaster and the lead master and those positions. Or same with your administrators that are reporting directly to the court.
So here's the second concern I would have with that is that when you are making personnel as you guys know, because you've managed people, when you're making termination decisions, it is a very delicate process. And there are limits when you are having a governing body make those decisions to what you are able to shield, protect. So if an employee, for instance, wants to make that governing body's deliberation public, they have legally the right to do that. And our legal counsel, if they were sitting here, as well as our insurance agents, would tell you that that is a recipe for disaster to have 3 people who are speaking off the cuff, making a determination on termination in a public forum. That we would be setting the county up potentially for lawsuits, because if any of us inadvertently said something that we unintended, that was not intended.
So you don't trust the elected county court?
I did not say that. What I said
Sounded like it.
is the ability to communicate in a way that is thoughtful. Often when we terminate, we are doing it in writing, for instance, and we are having legal counsel review the language that we're using and going through how that conversation needs to happen with an employee. When we sit here as a body, it is by its very nature unscripted, which means that one of us can be having an off day, say something as a joke that doesn't come across as a joke, that then opens this county up for a lawsuit over a termination. And to me, I am concerned about doing that. I'm concerned about the potential ramifications of that. That when we're looking at something as serious as termination, number one, by even having to have the executive session, you already are going to have people coming out of the woodwork saying, what is this about, right? And so by its very nature, because we're small, people will know that we are taking an employment action against somebody in this building. That if we allow us independently, you know, like I'm not saying that I want to have a say in whether, if you feel like it's warranted to discipline our roadmaster, you as the road commissioner, I feel are empowered to make that decision without needing to run it by me. That we trust each other in the same way that we trust every other elected official. To your point about whether I trust you, I do trust you. I trust you enough that I don't need to second judge your determination on the departments that you are managing. And I don't think we should be treating each other as elected officials, each duly elected in our own right to make decisions, any differently than we treat any other elected official in this building. I trust your judgment and I trust Sherry's judgment.
okay, and that being said, between the two of you, we need to keep the communication open, because there have been things, as far as personnel goes, that is in the county courts departments that we have been left out, and we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on with the recruitment for the transportation director. We don't know I don't know who the committee is who's looking at those. applications? Who's making those decisions? I don't know anything about that. And I think, I agree with you that terminations are a very serious matter and need to be held as close to the chest as possible. But I do believe that we also need to have this open communication so that we're not blindsided by promotions or, we had a job opening and it was filled and I didn't know anything about it. And so there's been a drop in communication over the past 3 or 4 months where if I don't ask the question, then I don't know what's going on. And I don't think that I should have to ask if a decision has been made. Then, simple email says, so-and-so was promoted, want you to know.
So on your view of what you're saying, and I guess we're not talking apples to apples, we're not talking exactly the same thing. I don't think that the court needs to be involved in any disciplinary action I might do with those report records. But I do think when that reaches the point of termination, that it's a better situation for the community to have an attorney in a room in an executive session with the county court to present that evidence to the other members and with legal guidance tell us how to handle that situation. And then it's a matter of going out and taking that action in public meeting. Then it's done. It's done. There's stuff you don't talk about, but the action is taken. That happened on the north end. Now, is there still some controversy? Yeah, there is, but had that not gone into executive session and the majority of the board voted, it threw a lot of cold water on a fire. That when you alone make that decision, it doesn't necessarily happen. Or if I was to make that decision with a road minister, I don't particularly want to be in that position without some legal advice, consideration from the rest of the court. It's just a better message to the public.
Yeah, but Pat, I'm not in a, let's just take, Dewey, don't worry, we're using you as an example. I am not in a position to decide whether somebody who I am not supervising should be disciplined. Right? I mean, that is not my role. And
Now say that again. I'm not sure.
so I wouldn't have any basis if I'm not supervising Dewey, right? I don't have any basis to judge whether he is deserving of, say, termination.
Just like
right? Any more than I would say Tory Flory, right? I don't supervise him. That's Gary's person. Dewey is your person. So why are we creating a scenario where we would, if you work here, risk that if you screw up, that is going to be made public? Because yes, we can meet an executive session, but we can't take action in executive session.
Exactly, that's what I said.
And so what I know from watching at the North End was that the process that they followed resulted in people walking off the job and us having an emergency sort of, how do we get first responders back? And I am not faulting the board up there for that, but I am saying, for whatever reason, the way that they're structured, they decided that they needed to take that action as a board, and that's fine. That's how they're structured. But my point is, that was not smooth sailing.
No.
People were upset and they wanted details for why the court made, or why the board made that decision. What I am suggesting is that by basically saying, hey, this is a court decision, that we are going to air any employee who screws up their dirty laundry in a public session that will be recorded on YouTube too for all of posterity, so that when they go to their next job application and their person Googles, as most employers do, that it's going to come right up the county court firing them. Our union contract, in addition to that, we agreed that when we're doing discipline, we're going to do it in a way that causes the least amount of embarrassment to that employee.
I don't agree with your assessment of what happened with everything. Because had that not happened the way it would have, they would still be off the job, in my opinion. But it did settle things down enough that you could have a town hall meeting and get them to come back to work. And it would not have happened if that would have been a decision by the board, the head of the board, and not.
I'm not sure that's true. And using that as an example, I don't think it's very good because it was a really bad situation and still is.
Well,
And I hope we never put ourselves in that type of situation. And I am going to have to agree with Liz that we could put ourselves in that type of position if we start doing that. But it's something to discuss. I think that maybe a discussion with our legal counsel to see, you know, where do they sit? Where does our insurance sit? What do other counties do? I still, you know, the supervisor's a supervisor, and that's
Can
her role here.
I'm going to go a little bit off of script and maybe throw out, this is a totally out of the box idea. I'm just going to say that. But I have an idea that maybe we want to consider as how this could potentially be structured. From my observations, where the confusion comes, particularly with the departments that are underneath the county court, is it's not really clear where our boundaries are. So it's not clear when I make a disciplinary decision how that needs to play out, right? Because it's underneath the three of us. I am designated as the person to make the decision, but it's complicated, to your point, right? It's complicated because public hears about it, they come and talk to you and say, what the hell is the judge doing? And then you are held accountable for my decisions in that way, because it's not clear who's responsible, right?
Yeah, it's really difficult when we're out of the loop.
Yeah, well, and some of it's complicated because we have quorum issues. And so I'm also trying to navigate what I am able to convey legally in private to the two of you, because we're also dealing with public meeting laws. So it's more complicated than just keeping everybody in the loop, because there are some things by law that if it needs to come before the county court, I can't communicate with you ahead of time. So some of our disciplinary action on our employees, for instance, the union contract spells out that if they don't like what I said, there's an appeal process. It goes before the county court. So I'm limited in what I can share sometimes. If the employee is planning on bringing it before us for an appeal process, I can't share the reasons that I took those decisions, because I'm communicating with you about a decision that we're going to have to make as a governing body.
Sure, well, I understand all that.
So all of this to say, here is an idea that I threw out. And I this was last minute, literally yesterday, I made kind of an org chart. So this is why I was kind of waiting to see where this would go, but here's an idea. And the purpose of this, just to put it on the record, is to be very clear about where the lines go. So here's my idea. What if, rather than look at an administrator who's supervising and you have all this complication with exactly what their role is, I still think whoever we put into that position is going to run into issues of where their responsibilities stop and where other elected officials lie. And, you know, it's complicated in this building because we're collectively supervising employees under the same contract. So it's funky. So my suggestion would be to take Teresa's current position as administrative assistant, reclassify it as executive assistant to the judge.
So if she's only answering to you, then we don't have her as a resource?
No. We hire a second person underneath the court that is the assistant to the commissioners. And that is your person.
And what do they do?
That person would take minutes. That person would help with anything that you guys are working on. So any research that you're looking for, anything that if you've got a project you're working on and you're working with legal counsel and you need staff to, hey, I need you to revise this or whatever, that person would be dedicated for whatever projects the two of you are taking on. In addition, that person could take the IT stuff off of Kelly. So they would do the website. They would be that sort of point of contact. They also, depending on how much we automate out of Terry's position, could potentially be the road secretary. Especially if the HR responsibilities are moved out of here, I think that still preserves two. Overall, it would save one FTE out of the budget by doing that. Okay, if you automate the personnel. It also ensures that we don't get into some of the argument that I have heard downtown about what is it that the judge really does, right? Because it's very clear that Teresa's my assistant, you guys have an assistant, Teresa and this other person would work together to do things on, making sure that you guys got copies of the minutes, that you got copies of the agendas, if you had briefings that need to be included, if the departments that you supervise need something in there, your assistant would be taking care of making sure all the documentation is there so that Teresa is not trying to track down people at the 11th hour saying, hey, where's the bid for this kind of thing, right? There's a second set of hands to do all of that. So to administrative sort of level. I would anticipate that because we would be taking some things off of Teresa and putting it to this other assistant, that would free Teresa up to help me with some of the larger projects where that's some of the things that maybe Lisa would have been helping with of like, hey, we need to be tracking where all of this grant money is going. Can you keep track of that for me? Can you make sure that we're getting our reports in on time? Can you keep track of that list? Just kind of random things like that. I think we could free up enough from her, give that to the assistant so the other assistant to you guys has adequate amount of work to do
To make it a full-time.
Exactly.
So in that, the court recorder would go into that position?
Yes, so the minutes would go to that person and then they would work together. So, Teresa would take the things. I'm still going to probably do most of the agenda setting, right? Most of it's coming to me and I'm figuring out what we need to do. So most of that is still going to come to me. But for the departments that you guys oversee, then the assistant, your assistant, the assistant to the commissioners, is the one that would take the lead on this, right? So that Teresa's not in charge of every department's every need, right? That helps her focus on just what I'm asking her to do. It also prevents her from having to answer to 3 people simultaneously, because this has not happened and I don't anticipate it would. But I could see a scenario if folks weren't getting along where if one of you guys told her to do something that I didn't want her to do, how would she know who to respond to, right? So I directed her not to do something and you guys told her, or one of you told her to do something. It leaves into question who is her real boss, who she should listen to. And this way it's very clear. She's my assistant. Your assistant, I assume we would split because I'm not sure we can justify adding 2.
I think we have to combine some of this stuff I think we know that some of this stuff can be put together for increase salaries.
Right.
Probably decrease if we do it in a good organizational.
Yeah.
Yes.
My anticipation would be that the assistant coming in for you guys would be probably about the range where Teresa currently is, and that Teresa would see an adjustment up because I would be asking for additional, more senior level kind of help, but less than what we're paying the chief of staff.
And so then you would be supervising directly these departments, whereas Lisa was supervising them before.
Exactly. So the idea then would be that each of us, like Wheeler County, takes departments and they are our departments. They are the same as the assessor's office, so under this example, and this, obviously this is just I'm throwing this out there. So say we had the road and weed commissioner, makes a lot of sense, I think, to keep that where it is. roads, weeds, but the current office manager would go under you, right? Very clear. And especially if eventually we're combining the office manager with this assistant position, makes perfect sense to me. Because that would be great support. That person would see that whole picture.
That
Then,
makes good sense to me, to make the assistant to the commissioners, the road department
Yeah,
secretary as well,
Yeah,
because that would make it a full-time.
I think
position to
workload-
me.
yeah, Workload in there would be, I think there's room for that in there. Once the database like in here
Right.
is set up, then it's simple that.
Right.
so then I could foresee us doing a human services commissioner. So I would see Shuttler Station coming back to me, because I wouldn't expect the commissioner to take on Shuttler and supervising people. So the human services commissioner, as an example, would take on family, seniors, transportation, say, 2-3 departments. And that commissioner would then determine how that structure needs to look. So if, say we went forward with this and Sherry became the human services commissioner, you might decide that the best course of action is to have a director of human services who is actually in the building supervising transportation, family, and seniors, and doing all of the grants for all 3 programs, and having.
Now, you said, when you started that part of the conversation, you said you saw human resources.
No, we're human services.
Human services, you called it.
Yes, because it's senior citizens, family services, and
You're calling
transportation,
human
which
services.
is
Human
human
services.
Oh, you
services,
got
which is
that under.
Yeah.
services to the
So that would be
citizens of
the
county.
second commissioner, human resources out of the building. We would contract with an
yes.
outside person that each of us could then access resources with. If we were, the expectation, if any of us needed to go through a disciplinary action with staff, there's a checklist. And so my expectation would be that whoever it is following that checklist. Our insurer needs to know, our legal counsel needs to know, and they carefully walk us through that process together with an HR consultant. And then I would take the rest of the department. So I would have planning, maintenance, and buildings, which makes, I think, some sense because I'm in the building, and juvenile for obvious reasons, veterans, which is low hanging fruit. I mean, Paul doesn't need a lot of supervision, but occasionally he needs something. So I'm here if he needs it. Public health is going to need to land someplace, so I could take that. And then library, and I just want to say for the record so that Mary doesn't freak out if she hears this, the intention for that would be the board still has that immediate oversight, but there needs to be an elected official who is somewhat responsible for that department. So the idea would be if they had an issue, if the board had an issue, they would have a resource, an elected official that they would go to if they were having a personnel issue and needed help working through it. So that is my idea. And the reason I like this is I think it clearly delineates who is responsible for who. So if somebody comes to me upset about what's happening in transportation, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to bring this up at county court, I'm going to say, go call Sherry. And if somebody has a problem with Dewey, I'm going to say, hey, thank you for your feedback, go call Pat. So that we are not stepping on each other's toes. We are not in a position where we feel caught off guard by each other's decisions, because I'm not responsible for your departments and you're not responsible for mine. Just like I'm not responsible for Chet or Ellen or any other elected official in this
Chet's
building.
not responsible for Chet.
Well, Jamie's in charge over there,
That's
but. So this is the idea. It's completely opposite of what we've been talking about with centralizing responsibility, but I just wonder if maybe something simpler. In terms of recruitment, it's easier, I will say. Finding an administrator to come in and navigate the relationships in here would be very challenging, I think. And an assistant to you guys is much simpler to recruit. Anyway, I'm not asking for a decision today, but I just wanted to at least put something on the table for us to kick around.
Yeah, because we need to start filling some of the holes.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I guess, I mean, to me, I did not know when I ran for county commissioner that I was going to end up with the most employees in the county.
Well, you
I
don't
was
really. You
completely-
have Dewey reporting to you. The rest of them report
But
to
it's all
Dewey.
black line report. I'm talking about black line reporting down the deal. They're under your umbrella.
Mhm.
I did not know that.
Well, I have
Lucky
17.
you.
Huh?
I have 17 reporting to me, actually 19. So I'm not sure that I,
Well, that'll be close. Yeah, it'll be close. I think there's 13 in the when I went through the other org chart and you went the original organizational chart, they went into Lisa and she had less than I had. Which, like I said, I did not know that was part of the job. So the compensation is definitely a little skewed.
Yes, it
But
is.
but I
Yes,
don't,
it
but
is.
that part doesn't matter. This I take on as my responsibility. Nothing has been added to me here. It is what it is. I don't know how you feel about taking on more than half.
Well,
The transportation, I still have questions. What is the direction for transportation? But if you're going to take it on, I guess you could let me know. I'm just kind of.
thanks a lot.
But yeah, I mean,
And I
it's not like anything has changed as far as I'm concerned. So why would?
and I should say in all of this, the county court still has a role in, you can't just create positions out of thin air, right? So the county court has to approve job descriptions because we have to determine whether it's a union or non-union. We have to set salary schedules. We still have to approve budgets.
So who is going to perform that function where Lisa was doing that under the HR hat, upgrading the job descriptions and keeping this current?
I think we have a pretty good basis. And so I think elected officials could look at that, and then they need to involve the court at some point, because if they're updating a job description, the way our current process works is we're the ones that approve that ultimately. So I could envision if they felt like there was a major overhaul that needed to happen, or maybe a whole salary review of a position, say if somebody felt like they were misclassed, that would be the role for this HR consultant that we had. But if it was something simple like, hey, there's a typo here, or I want to add one responsibility that's pretty minor, but I need to make sure it's in here, I assume that the elected officials could probably just do that and then work with me to get it on the court's agenda to follow that process. So it depends on how big we're talking.
That's what HR. When we contract HR. So that all being said,
Mhm.
again, we need to make some decisions because we're stagnant right now.
Mhm.
People are taking on things that they were taking on before. Now already to cover for where the holes are. So we won't meet again until January. We need to be ready in January to make some moves, because otherwise we're going to be March before we get anybody hired to fill any of these positions.
Yeah, it's even when you look at the road department.
Office
Office
manager.
manager.
Recruiting
Mhm.
Yes,
today is a long process
yes, it
and
is.
difficult to find people to fill those positions.
If we decided to do something like this, here's what I think it would look like. We would reclassify Teresa's position, which is be pretty straightforward. I think that's a pretty easy one. The job description for the assistant to the commissioners would need to be developed. So some of them would be duties that are coming off Teresa to free up additional capacity for her to help me with some other things that I could use some assistance with. And then anything that would sort of be legacy things coming off of Terry in her transition to retirement. And then, so those two things, I would anticipate potentially if you got the right person that assistant to the commissioners could handle
Yeah, because really all we're asking there is the website, because
Well,
anytime you
it's
get new equipment or a new user, our contracted are gonna have to come up with that.
Are they?
Is that not correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the contract. So really, it's just, they just said they wouldn't do the website.
Mhm.
So that would be, and how much time is, well, I have to ask Kelly, but do you know, how much time does she potentially use on the website? It just kind of depends on what's going on,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I send her stuff every week or,
Right,
you know,
because
but
the
then I don't
minutes
know
and the
whatever.
agenda and
She updates
Not
everything,
near
so I have
fast
no
enough
idea.
or less, whatever it is.
True.
Well, that'll always be true. That'll always be true. And Les will be happy that we know who's gonna do the website, so that's another thing. So that all being said, and I'm willing to look at this and think about it.
Okay.
My wheels are already spinning around as
Mhm.
usual. Where are we at with the Director of Transportation? My understanding is Shania Drinkwine was promoted to coordinator, transportation coordinator,
Mhm.
which means she was to be doing some of those responsibilities that the director was doing before, but now she's out on leave until March at this point,
Mhm.
possibly longer. So
Yeah, so here's,
Nathan has volunteered to do some of that stuff, and he and I have been working together to try to make sure that it's happening. I think we've missed a deadline already, but
it happens.
it happens.
So, yes, as you guys will remember, we approved to advertise both the director and coordinator position to see what came out of the applicant pool. Shania was the only one who applied.
So
Yeah,
I heard there was another applicant.
I did too.
Not in the initial. In the initial one, she was the only one. And so,
So what does that mean?
Okay, so
in the
now-
initial?
Now, this is a sore place for me,
Mhm.
very sore place for me, because we continued to advertise for those two positions in the local newspaper with a deadline that had expired over and over and over again. So how do we recruit people if we don't say, I mean, it said that the letters were required postmarked by the 7th of September. And then it just kept being in the paper, being in the paper, being in the paper. When I asked why, I was told why that date didn't change. They just said, well, it's still open until filled. Well, it didn't say that. And so people they didn't apply because it said it was, and so they blamed the newspaper that they kept putting in the same ad when it had expired. So if we're going to recruit, we need to be consistent about how we're recruiting so that we do find some people that are interested.
got it. Yeah, I did not realize that had happened.
Yes, that was very, I did not like the answer I got when I asked about it.
Okay. So to answer your question on why it continued to be sort of recruit or open, is that after Lisa had spent some time in that department and given the reporting requirements, all of those things, one of the lessons learned is that in that particular department, it was important to have multiple people knowing how those systems worked, right? So if somebody was out
Yes.
for exactly the reason that we're facing right now, right? There's no knowledge base that's sitting in the courthouse right now of how those systems work. And so what we had discussed was keeping it open to see if anybody else might show up that might be interested in either doing a coordinator, which it would be a dual, sort of two coordinators at the same level where they could mirror each other basically and share the workload. So they would be dispatching and coordinating simultaneously, or seeing if there was still somebody out there who might actually fit a director qualification. I don't know when it was re-advertised. I think Lisa put it on Indeed and all of those things. I never saw the applications that came in. And I think in the transition, it just sort of was held in that sort of like purgatory state. I don't think any interviews were conducted of sort of that second round. And we have a temp dispatcher right now. And so I think we we just sort of put it on hold while we were figuring out what the next step is going to look like in terms of staffing.
So you said initially,
Yes,
what happened after initially? I mean, that you didn't get any applications initially, so did we get some at some point?
we got one initially, which was Shania. And so,
And none after that ever?
so when Shania's came in, the question that Lisa had for me is, I mean, technically, she was the only one that applied in time for the deadline. So do we skip over her? She's clearly got knowledge and abilities. We're asking her to do coordinator work right now because there's no staff. Do we promote her and continue to see if there's a second person out there or a director level person? And so that's why it stayed open.
But you haven't answered the question. Have there been any other applications come in after that?
I think after the promotion of Naya, because she was the initial applicant, so Lisa asked, what should we do with this one? Do we skip over her?
Yeah, but that's not the question. The question is, okay, so there was another open and there were applications and Lisa just didn't do anything with them. They just died because Lisa left.
Because I mean.
Is that
just-
true?
just
They
for-
are in purgatory, yes, right
Just
now.
for the record, there was a name of somebody that works in the public transportation service that didn't get an interview, and I'm wondering what happened.
Yeah, no, nobody got an interview on the second. It just sort of was sitting there because we had a promotion for Naya because she was the only applicant. And then we have a temporary dispatcher in place. And so there was a question on with Lisa going out and it being up in the air how we were going to staff things and that just be put on hold.
And I think that's probably to speak to Commissioner Williams' comment earlier is we have no idea about any of this. So we're
Yeah.
just trying to get the pieces put
Yeah.
together. So we
Because
understand.
we were totally left out of this communication. We didn't know what was happening. And people are asking us and we don't know, and it's embarrassing. We have to say, we don't know, and then we have to ask, and it's all just a simple email.
Okay.
This is what's happening. Doesn't have to have a decision making.
Yeah.
No comments need to be made except for thank you for the information.
To circle back though, and maybe put a plug in for my little idea. This structure eliminates that, right? I
If
say,
she's willing to take that on.
go to Sherry.
If she's willing to take that on. Yeah, we're basically 25% compensated.
Well, yeah, it has to have a director or transportation has to have a director. Now, as far as seniors and family services, I think those are both well enough structured right now and functioning to a point where they would be easy to oversee.
Mhm.
Transportation is a whole other story. But it might be an initial effort to get it where it needs to be.
Mhm.
And I would be willing to take that on. Have
Well,
you
mine hasn't
talked to
changed.
these people? Have they seen this? Do
No.
they have any idea that they might
Nope.
not like me?
Well, this is always a delicate balance, right? Me throwing out ideas, because if I tell them first and it gets to you guys, then I didn't give you guys a heads up. And if I tell you guys and don't tell them, then they are caught off guard. So,
Okay, so unfortunately, we're at the end of this month and year, so
yeah,
this needs to be decided by the very first meeting in January, so we can, this is what we're gonna do, we make all these adjustments and we'll get them done in a timely manner and make it happen.
are there some parts of it, here's a question, are there some parts of it that we might agree on? So here, so for instance.
Liz, I said nothing's changed for me, so why would I?
Well, for instance, what I would say is it would be a pretty simple thing for me to bring, say, the office manager thing back and just adjust the reporting like right now, so nothing would change in Terry's job description other than here's who she reports to and fixing that and moving that under you. It's currently under me. It's under me and the chief of staff, I think. So we could move it under you. And I don't know if you want her to direct report to you or you want the chain of command to go up through Dewey. It's up to you on how you would want to structure that.
And I think
You
that
got
was,
to-
the reason she was in this building is because she was in this building and Dewey was not. And so that's why her reporting was to this building instead of to Dewey. I know that was a question you had before.
Yeah.
That was why, for
You have
supervisory
You have
reasons,
two
he
other
was not
department leads
here.
there, so is it, two, so there's nothing, little
Right.
complication. in that, too.
Yeah.
So,
Which means maybe it would be simpler if you reported to me and then.
Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
Because I mean, they're still going to do, I think the intention would be they would still interact with her in the same way they've been doing. It's just that you're the one that's checking her timesheet, approving leave, those sorts of things that are sort of the day-to-day management. So if that's something that just I think there are pieces of this, for instance, the HR step, if we're in agreement that that needs to be out of house, there's no reason that I can't start soliciting an HR consultant.
Right, yes, yes,
So-
because that already we know we want to do.
Okay, so,
And we also need a director of transportation. Or is
Okay.
that my decision?
That's your decision.
that would be your decision.
I think
So I
heard-
want to put
I
that
think I
back
heard
out there
Liz say We
now.
don't need to fill that.
I did not say that.
Yes,
I
you did.
said, I'm pretty sure what I said is that would be up to Sherry.
Yeah, I really think we do. And again, just because, two coordinators is okay, but if they start having an issue with who's responsible for what, then that's a problem.
Okay.
Whereas if you have a director and you have a coordinator and you have dispatchers, then there is a chain of command in that department and we know who's doing what, and we don't have to wonder about, did you do that report? No, that was your responsibility. No, it wasn't. I don't want that to happen.
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna throw out and suggest. How about Pat, I will send you Terry's job description. You can take a look at it. I will adjust the reporting before I send it. If you see anything else that you would like to update, just so we can do it in one fell swoop, let us know. We can get that on the agenda for early January.
Then down the road, at retirement time or whatever, we can take a look at that again.
Yeah.
Well, as we progress, if this is what we're gonna do, then we can see how it fits.
Yeah, I don't see that part of this changing one way or the other. That portion is kind of, this is a better place to
Mhm.
Yes.
And
put
if,
that
yes,
anyway, that none of
yes.
that's changing within this.
Right.
It's really, I'll tell you, this really is more about her responsibilities and your responsibilities than it is anything that's involved in the responsibility.
Mhm. So we can, for sure, that's the low hanging fruit, I think. I can start soliciting proposals from HR consultants.
Please.
I don't know for sure that we will have them back in time to make a decision on the first meeting because it's the holidays. So we may have people who are like, we're out. But I will at least make the initial inquiry so that we have a discussion draft. I would like to show you what the executive assistant to the judge job description would look like. And then you can decide then whether you want to go in that direction or not. So if we're ready to pull the trigger, we can pull the trigger in January. And if we're not ready, we don't have to. And then you guys can think about this other stuff. I will say my thought process in not having an administrator was the idea that in not supervising every department. Because to your point, you guys are only 0.25 FTE. Well, if it takes 0.25 FTE to supervise them, then how many FTE does it take to supervise everybody? And that I still have other responsibilities. So I just want to point that out, that my idea with having an assistant and not having an administrator was the idea that I would have some help in supervising.
Current HR questions and stuff like that. We can get answers from CIS.
They can provide their CIS pre-loss is there if we are about to take a potential action against an employee. We need to call them and they will make sure that we've done what we need to do. They don't actually do. So they will tell us, they will give us advice and we need to follow it. They don't actually do the thing.
It would,
But
it would
our
support,
elected officials have a concern, they can call CIS and
Yes.
say, how do I handle this situation?
right, there's support for the elected officials. There is no support for the employees. That's
Correct.
my concern, is we need to get HR where an employee has a problem, they've gone to their supervisor or their elected official and they are not getting what they feel is, they have somebody to call who's a neutral party who can help walk them through the process and mediate what the issue is.
One other thing that I think is worth pointing out on this particular sort of org chart is this has not yet come up with our union members, but I'm surprised it hasn't. The way that the union contract is structured, when an employee is unhappy with, say, a disciplinary decision that I make as their supervisor, there's an appeal process. I am the appeal.
Yep.
By the contract. So anybody who is underneath me does not have an appeal. They can go up to the county court, but anybody that's, say, you know, Chet's folks, Ellen's folks, Marion's folks, they have 3 steps, right? It's their direct supervisor, then me, then the county court. So for our folks right now that are underneath me, that does not exist. It's me and then the court. So that is something else that this resolves, at least for most of our union employees. I would still have, I think, two or three. If we went with this structure, that we would maybe need to talk to the union about seeing if one of you guys would be the appeal, so that they legitimately have 3 steps.
They really need a spot to go.
Yeah.
Exactly. But this would help alleviate some of that for the departments if Sherry were to take on some of those departments. That would truly give our folks a 3-step process, which they currently do not have. They have 2.
But technically, if somebody in my department came to me and they weren't satisfied, they came to you and weren't satisfied, they go to the county court, they're getting us both.
That's the majority, yeah. That one is unavoidable.
So they really only have a 2-step process, because if they're unhappy after they get done with you, then they're still gonna be unhappy, because unless one of us changes our mind.
Yeah.
Which could happen.
It's
Could
happening.
happen, could happen. Anyway, I just wanted to put that on the record, that was something else that I thought this particular org chart might resolve for at least some of our union members. Okay, anything else on this?
No, but in some of the discussion, I think of just the next item, where are we with economic development and all of this?
Oh, where does economic?
Oh, the broader
development fall?
questions.
It goes right there.
Goes right here.
No, I should have, but we can get into the other one. I just have questions.
Okay, are we ready to move on? So let's,
Yes.
it sounds like the idea is the next meeting, I will bring back some of those documents and we will make a decision on where we want to go.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
I know that we talked a little briefly about the quorum challenges and stuff that's going on. And I want to state that I think I understand the quorum challenge. But my understanding is, both from Rob, and I don't know that, did you know that he's no longer an MC?
No,
Rob Levitt?
Yeah, that's a.
Really?
There's some internal stuff going on. and they
Great.
Put him on paid administrative leave,
Really?
and then the last word I got was that he wanted to do the MC, so.
Interesting.
But I have been on some Zoom meetings where this public meeting, he was an expert on public meeting stuff, so I'm pretty confident in his advice on public meetings. And we struggle severely, especially if we both want to go to a board meeting, or 2 of us want to go to a housing meeting, or 2 of us have a discussion, whatever it is. My understanding is, and let's take the elected officials meeting the other day, if 2 of us would have been there, we could have been there, as long as we do not participate in the discussion. That's from Rob, and his discussion about, and his advice. Now, perception can definitely cause some conflict. But if you don't do anything wrong, perception has no weight in that decision. And I went to the 911 or the Frontier Telenet deal the other day because I want to get educated and up to speed. There's no other way to do that. Except to show up, sit in the back room, and keep your mouth
Well,
shut.
I've been to a lot of Frontier Telenet meetings, but
So,
Yeah.
so those
without
things
anything
happen.
said.
And I think we need to recognize support they're going to happen when we follow the public meeting rules within that. And that we cannot participate in anything that might lead to deliberation that might end up in a decision made by the court. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, my concern in that particular meeting that you're referencing, though, was the very fact that we wouldn't be able to engage. Because my hope and the direction that the court had given me at the last meeting was that you guys had directed me to go meet with the county.
See, I
Elected
didn't- I didn't
officials.
get out of here with that understanding. I thought it was just, I mean, I didn't know how that was going to work.
Mhm.
I didn't know it was going to be an elected officials meeting. I thought you were going to talk to elected officials, find out whatever. I don't know that I felt we had any clear guidance on what that was, except there was going to be some
Well, I
feedback from
think it-
elected officials on what they thought we should do about how to move forward, not so much about making a decision, but what would be the steps of the process moving forward.
Mhm.
And my intent, when I said I was doing that meeting, was I wanted to know what they thought. Now, it doesn't mean I got to participate in the discussion, but it means I got to have my ears open
Yeah,
to find out what they were thinking.
yeah, I totally get that, and I appreciate that, and it is sticky. My concern was, and I think you are right, that if we both sat there and were completely silent, that probably wouldn't violate meeting laws. But what that does, though, is silence us. That prevents us from actually engaging. And I thought the purpose of me having that conversation with the elected officials was to engage with them. And that was my concern, was that the way that was structured, there was no way for me to engage with
I
them.
didn't get it that way out of the elected officials meeting. It was trying to find out what is it that they thought, because I thought it was all about, do we form a committee to figure this stuff out, do it at the court level in a public meeting like we are?
Mhm.
What is that process that the elected officials think that should happen, and have an open hearing to hear what that was? Either way, it ended up being what it was. It was not a public meeting issue, obviously, but we could sure use notifying potential quorums, those kind of meetings, which is a simple notification, or we could make more public meetings. And now, I think that, the public meeting goal is that it's all stand
Mhm.
executive session, have it all on the table.
Right.
That's where the discussion happens. That is the goal of the public meeting.
Mhm. I also do think, though, that there is value when that elected officials group meets. There are some things that, in order to build healthy professional relationships amongst that leadership team, then maybe they actually want to be able to be pretty candid in a way that maybe they don't feel like they can be in a public meeting. And that their ability to engage with us individually, which is completely legal, needs to be preserved so that they can give us candid feedback. And so, yeah.
But I think they can be candid if we don't. The trick to it is, and I've talked to the Ethics Commission last week too, and they don't oversee public meetings, I know that, but they will give you
Guidance.
advice and guidance.
Mhm.
And I got the same that I've got it wrong, but it was nothing different, nothing I don't think I didn't know, but yeah, it's not being pulled into that conversation and the discipline it requires to sit there and keep your mouth shut. That's what it's about.
Mhm.
So it's not to be difficult.
Okay, so just to clarify, next steps. The road office manager, I will send you a copy of the current job description with the reporting changes, and you can modify anything else you think is appropriate. I will start the process of putting out a request for proposals from human resources contractors. And then I also will take a stab at what the executive assistant to the judge job description would look like. I think it's just going to be kind of a elevating of Teresa's current job description. And then I think we need to plan on in January making a decision on if we want to go in this direction of each having silos, what that looks like. And the mechanics of that are actually pretty simple, which it would just be, hey, we're appointing Sherry, in this case as Human Services Commissioner, and then adjusting the job description reporting for each of the departments that are underneath.
So before I say, yes, I'll do this, can I give a direction to reopen the Director of Transportation recruiting and put that
You want that first?
and put that out there, because whether I do this or not, we still need something done with transportation. We have a big, giant, enormous hole. And I would be willing to be the one that takes on that recruitment process.
Okay.
If we would just get it out there, then I will work with Teresa. Is that okay with you to assist me at this point in time
Mm-hmm.
in trying to recruit the Director of Transportation?
Okay. I'm okay with that. We already have the position
It's there,
description
we
and
just need to
salary.
put it back out there,
Mhm.
right?
Okay. I don't have any objections to that. Okay, should we move on? Is enough for now? Okay, 6.3 is discuss BDO zone designation.
Yeah, I just want to make sure on the last item, you guys are all satisfied that I made that last long enough.
Yeah.
Yes, I think 2.5 hours on one subject is
We have
excellent.
We have
Thank you.
thoroughly beaten the dead horse.
So
Thank
on
you.
the video, I know Steve put it in the paper and notified I went to city council in Arlington last week. I did send out an email there and I asked him, because my initial, when I brought this to court the first time, was this was going to be a county designation, and Sherman
Yeah.
County was going to get one too. My response back from them, which I looked at the email right up here today, was that they don't give those designations by county line, they give them by how they pick Arlington, and 75-mile radius, and
Yeah.
Sherman County is
Okay,
within
that
a
answers the question I had.
75-mile radius. So
The question I
that
had.
that was the kind of question I had, but it does bring up to what happens in Gilliam County when a company comes and wants to utilize this process to get their tax credits and use a BDO designation. What is the county process and strategy for handling that company?
I don't know enough about that. It's not,
I really think it's not about knowing, so we need to have, what is the structure we have for somebody wanting to, I mean, we kind of use the Portland pass and we know what's going on with Portland.
Mhm.
It's going to take them a while to get their arms around it, but you had indicated early on you were going to be head of economic development. You said it again today, but what is that process we're going to have within the county to help businesses looking at our county for possible development to move that forward?
Here's my question. If the BDO says City of Arlington, then people that are interested in businesses that are interested, are they going to call the City of Arlington? And are they going to be historically apathetic and not care and not tell anybody else that there's a business that's interested? Or this whole thing where they designated City of Arlington was a problem for me, in the idea that they are not actively seeking any type of
Yeah, what I can say is I think that
Advance.
there is, and I know you don't all feel that Korea is a helpful entity, and I disagree with you much, because I
I
think
don't think I ever said that.
they
Oh,
will
I said
help with stuff like this. I think there's a lot of drive from them to help with that, reaching out to people in the communities that they're in and what you need to do when it has to do with renewable energy, which most of these projects do. Also, I I'm working on the city of Arlington continuing to be engaged in the process. And I did speak at their meeting last week about how they can connect tighter with the Gilliam County Court so that they can get a feel of what's happening, what's available, and how to move projects forward. Will be very beneficial to North Indiana. I'm in that conversation. And I hope that
Oh, I hope so too. Can you define for people listening what BDO, all these acronyms always drive me nuts. And
I don't remember exactly how to say it, but it is a well,
I knew it was bio something.
bioeconomic, development opportunity zone.
Bioeconomic opportunity, development
So it's about-
opportunity.
It's about biofuels and the economic development opportunity zone. And basically, my understanding of this is it's a rating that helps get companies tax credits to drive businesses to help them.
Well, and to put the small communities on the map for them.
And there's only been 3 designated. They initially said there was going to be 4, but they were talking Kermit County, Gilliam County is 2 or 4, which was initial. This will go other places, but these are the first ones. And this was driven along by the Port Board.
Yeah, my understanding from talking to Business Oregon is that this is driven by Port of Portland because they have mandates to have fuel sources that are renewable. And they are looking at the municipal waste that's coming in. And that is specifically why Arlington was designated, is because of the landfill.
Right.
Which I
And
never
which is
could
the other reason why I
understand.
couldn't understand why it was City of Arlington, because the landfill and the
It's in
MSW
the
is
county.
That was
not
the
in the city
email
of
that I put out
Arlington.
was that Arlington doesn't own a city.
So to
No,
your original question though, what I would anticipate with any potential opportunity is that we have a partnership with the port, and depending on what the request is, that we are partnering with the state or other local entities, depending on what they're looking for. So if they're looking for land, if they're looking for, I anticipate that if somebody's looking to take advantage of this, they're probably going to try to locate as close as they can to where the waste streams are coming in. And so we're probably looking at Shelter Station, for instance, as a potential place for some people to land. So I would anticipate then, obviously that's a county court decision. And so we work with them privately as much as we can to respect whatever confidentiality they need to maintain for their business operations. And then if it requires an investment from the county or whatever it is to entice them in and bring jobs, then that's a decision we make as a group in terms of what we can offer. So, and my hope is that the port gets a bang up director who can really be a partner with us and help shepherd these businesses, knows exactly what's available where and can really help land people in the right places.
There's
So,
just a lot of opportunity out there right now that we need to get their act together.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Anything more on that particular?
No.
Okay. Board openings. Teresa, do you want to give an update on what we have a bunch advertised, I will say. I think there's a vacancy on the budget, compensation, cultural coalition.
SIP,
Yeah, transportation.
compensation, cultural, budget committee, and the statewide transportation improvement fund advisory board and committee. Those are all being advertised.
So I feel like as a commissioner with a year under my belt about, we have circled back to exactly where we were a year ago. And we were talking a year ago about how to recruit these positions because the way we advertise is not getting filled, which is still happening. And if I don't know, or we don't know, and I'm going to do recruiting because I think whoever might be interested will not be interested unless we let them know what it entails, what the time requirements are. what is expected of them, and give them some idea what those positions are, they're probably not going to apply based on an article.
Mhm.
I have to reach out, and I'm willing to do that, but I don't even know what those openings are, and I haven't read the paper. And we can get the paper, probably should.
You might want to get it.
And the
But
reason,
it's
I heard you say earlier, the reason why, I mean, the Times Journal is our paper of record. So
I
we
understand
have
that-
to put
I
these in.
understand it has to be there,
It
I
has to
just
be in
don't
there.
necessarily think that's the only way to advertise for these positions and expect to get it filled.
Yeah. I mean, they're
What
on
do
the
you
website,
suggest?
but like you said
I
earlier,
suggest
people
that-
don't.
That if you, or Liz, or anybody listening out there knows of somebody that might fit, talk to them about it. See, when we went through this process last year with the compensation board, we got 5 or 6.
Mhm.
And I think that's what we need to do.
But what did we do to
Educate.
get those? Did we make phone calls or did we do something besides the newspaper that enticed
reached out
people
to-
to
I
be
reached out-
interested?
I reached out to some people. I think you, Liz, reached out
Okay,
to some people.
well, I have some people that I'm thinking would be.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter, I got notes.
Forget it.
Me too.
I'm not doing that.
Don't
Yeah,
even
I-
ask me.
I think honestly, people are willing to serve if they're asked, but there are a lot of people who are not wanting to just raise their hand. I mean, they want to have somebody reach out.
Well, and
Yeah,
there's
well,
people out there
it's-
that don't realize, again, you know, and unfortunately, there are people that don't take the paper or pay any attention to that sort of thing in the paper, unfortunately, that may be interested if they were asked.
And I think some of it is just, what is this gonna take and how much time is I gonna have to spend on it? And what's it about? It's just that have a paper that comes to conversation board business. Tell them much.
But if
Well,
we
it-
recruited without having it in the paper, people would be mad at us.
No, we're not saying,
No, it's not-
no,
it's
we're
got-
not saying that it shouldn't be in
It's
the
gotta be
paper.
in
We're
the
just
paper.
saying that people aren't looking at that. Dang
It's
it.
got to be in the
They're not
paper.
responding to it.
Okay.
They're not responding to it.
Okay.
They're
so-
looking at it and saying,
I mean,
oh,
I
that's
think
nice.
we- I
Somebody
think
else
we
is
have-
gonna do that.
We have 2 tools, the website and the paper that we have to use, as much as possible, but that doesn't necessarily
It's not
get
reaching.
people to put their hand in here.
Yeah.
So this is a call out to beat the bushes, because we do have, especially the budget committee is, as we were discussing earlier, very important in
And they're
determining.
just Gary's positions on the.
Yes, yeah, they're on staggered terms. So
How
Gary,
many on the compensation board?
it's up to 5. We currently have 4. So technically, if we don't get any names, we can proceed. But if
It's
there
3
is,
to
Did
5.
somebody resign?
Right.
Or
yes,
so are we down to 3 or are we down to 4?
we're down to 4.
Because it's 3 to 5. Isn't
It's
that
3 to
correct?
5.
Yeah.
You have to have a minimum of 3 to meet the statute. So we have enough they can meet. But if there's somebody out there who would like to serve, there's a vacancy.
But we don't know. I can't
And then how many on the
Uh,
transportation board?
That whole board, all of their terms expired.
Expired, that's what I thought.
remember. Oh, ouch.
So
I think it's a minimum of 7. They did have
Really?
9, or it's 5 or 7 or something. I don't know. That's a Sabrina question if she's still on.
there's lots of capacity on that one. Somebody's interested. And the Cultural Coalition as well. I
That would
think
be
there's a lot of
keep up
vacancies.
with recruit for it.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right.
Exactly. Okay, are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay, let's go into announcements and next meeting. Next meeting is January 5th, 2022. Yeah, that's it. Sherry, what do you got going on?
We had CATCO last week. There were many good discussions. One of them was around the COVID leave, which was enlightening to me. And then I have NORCOR tomorrow. I kind of looked at the agenda, but I don't think there's anything big going on at NORCOR. And of course, it's still virtual, so anybody that wants to tune in, please tune in. What else do I have going on? CIS is having a program tomorrow afternoon that has to do with us old people in Medicare. So I'm going to listen to
You're
that
not old.
because I'm going to need that
Stop
one of
it.
these days. And my fall in the Mid-Columbia Medical Center parking lot yesterday.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was true. It was cute. Anyway, that's what I've going on, and then we have the holidays coming up, so things are kind of quiet after that.
Holiday party on the
Had a
22nd.
busy week this week, but not much after that. Oh, and the holiday party on the 27th.
22nd. Yeah. Pat, what about you?
Health district meeting, we set the health district meeting last night. City council last week in Arlington. Creative board meeting was last Friday, and Port Arlington's meeting tonight. I won't say that.
That one's also on Zoom. Anybody who wants to.
I was gonna listen in, but it's.
The other one, I think North Carolina County Public Health District is having a meeting tonight, special meeting, I believe, on the recruitment process with special districts and where they're at, some of that.
I have, but the one big thing that's coming up is like the MCHED board is doing a task force to talk about including us in their district. They're holding their first meeting on Friday. And so I am planning on listening in, although Jessica Meta said that, I mean, really it's an internal, they're trying to work out voting and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think they're looking for a lot of input from us at this particular time, but I'm planning on listening just in case there's something comes up. So I will report back what I hear from them, where that discussion is going. That is still ongoing. And that is really it. Other, for at least the rest of this year, we do have the holiday party for staff next week. And folks are just, a lot of folks are trying to get their vacation times taken so they can get under their 200 hours. So I expect it's going to be pretty quiet in the building, as is usually the case around this time. People are spending time with their families and not in the building, resting. So that's all I have. Anything else for the good?
Will you
of the
be
day?
available next week?
I will be in and out. Ames has got a pediatrician appointment on Monday, but I will be around and checking email throughout the week. So
Okay.
yeah, and I'll be at the staff
And you'll be
meeting
at the
on
luncheon?
Wednesday. Yes.
Luncheon on Wednesday? Okay.
So I will be around. Yes,
So that's a possible forum.
It is a quorum.
we're not going to discuss
We're just having
money
lunch.
business. We're going to eat.
Have lunch.
We're going to eat and be merry. And Teresa has a fun game we're going to play.
Oh, boy.
Okay, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, it is 1:22 and I'll adjourn the meeting.